like to call to order the January 8th, 2019 meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. If you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please call the roll.
Yes. Councilmember Friedman? Here. Councilmember Dominguez? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Rouse?
Here.
Councilmember Snedden is not present. Councilmember Gutierrez?
Here.
And Mayor Murillo?
Here. So Councilmember Snedden has a teaching assignment in Hawaii, for anyone who's wondering. I'd like to open this first meeting of 2019 of the Santa Barbara City Council with anticipation for a year focused on excellence in public service and a dedication to improving the quality of life of our residents, our businesses, and our institutions. I welcome back my colleagues to Chambers, our staff, and community members and all of our partners serving the public. My colleagues here on the dais are a fine group of people, and there's going to be 6 of us until we make an appointment to District 6 next month. We've governed and served with 6 members in the recent past, and we did a commendable job working together to make decisions cooperatively and with respect. So the next few weeks will be another opportunity for us to demonstrate that same kind of collaboration. Yesterday, I attended the inauguration of California Governor Gavin Newsom, and I found hope and pride there in our great state. Governor Newsom called California a giant engine of commerce with an economy larger than that, but than all but 4 nations in the world. How about that? He was committed to addressing climate change and supporting the state's undocumented labor force and providing universal health care. And indeed, he released a plan to create a statewide marketplace for prescription drugs with the goal of making medicine affordable. I'm glad to report this to our council today, and I'm proud to be a Californian and proud to be your mayor. And finally, as tomorrow is the anniversary of the Montecito debris flow, I'll call for a moment of silence to honor the people who lost their lives and also the first responders. Many of them are city employees who were there to help with the disaster response and recovery. Thank you. There's going to be some commemorative events tomorrow. In the morning at the courthouse, there'll be a flag dedication. That's 11 o'clock in the morning. And in the evening, starting at Lower Manning Park at 6:30, folks will walk down San Isidro Road to All Saints by the Sea Episcopal Church with transportation provided to Lower Manning Park. Holly, our executive assistant, has a schedule of shuttle services. So if you'd like to attend tomorrow night, you can get a ride to Lower Manning Park. Holly, thank you so much. We will move to ceremonial items. Mr. Casey. Thank you.
Item 1, Employee Recognition Service Award pins.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. Each month we like to recognize employees for achieving certain milestones with their service to the city. And today we have a number of employees whose names I'd like to read into the record, and 3 of the employees are here to receive their pins in person. With 5 years of service to the city, Karina Arroyo, accounting assistant with the finance department. Tom Buellers, administrative analyst 2, airport department. Esteban Diaz, custodian, airport department. Bidad Garagosli, supervising transportation engineer, public works department. Roberto Santana, airport patrol officer, airport department. And Raymond Unzueta, senior maintenance worker, parks and recreation department. With 10 years of service to the city, Cesar Barrios, waterfront parking supervisor, waterfront department. And Brian Kerr, police officer, police department. With 15 years of service to the city, Louis Alvaro, senior streets maintenance worker, public works department. With 20 years of service to the city, Keith Bazell, senior engineering technician, public works department. Lucia Corral, Accounting Technician, Finance Department, and Irma Unzueta, Senior Planner 1 with the Community Development Department. With 25 years of service, and he's here today to receive his pinned in person, Victor Garza, Downtown Plaza and Parking Manager, Public Works Department. And with 30 years of service, and both of them are here in attendance as well to receive their pins, Rebecca Bjork, Public Works Director, Public Works Department, and Margaret Smith, Public Safety Dispatcher 3 with the Police Department.
Here's your pin. For 25 years of service to the City of Santa Barbara, Victor Garza began his career with the City of Santa Barbara in January 1994 as a Public Works Inspector 2 in the Public Works Department. He was quickly recognized for his strategic problem-solving and ability to act with the city's best interest in mind. He was acknowledged for creating a more responsive and responsible Public Works inspection process. Victor was promoted to Streets Maintenance Supervisor in 1997, where he was responsible for leading streets crews and responding to public requests for service. Early on, he was assigned to the role of Safety Officer. In just 2 years, Victor was promoted to the Streets Maintenance Superintendent. In this role, he initiated TV inspection of the storm drains and a process to train crews to see themselves as city ambassadors. Victor's skills and leadership were needed in downtown parking in 2001 when he was appointed parking superintendent. His attention to training and consistent customer service is exemplified by the friendly downtown parking kiosketeers who collect parking fees and give directions to visitors. Victor's leadership is easily recognizable as he is repeatedly put in charge of managing large projects like the Downtown Plaza Experience, oversized vehicles, the Safe Parking Program, and the State Street Ambassador Program. His responsiveness and ability to take on more led to the creation of his current title, the Downtown Plaza and Parking Manager. Victor demonstrates leadership that goes above and beyond any role he is given. He values Santa Barbara and relishes the privilege of serving the city. He is well respected throughout the organization and by the many business interests of downtown. The city is fortunate to have him as a leader. As icing on the cake, Victor is also responsible for starting the treasured Public Works Band, the highlight of many city gatherings. Victor is a longtime resident of the area. When not working, he enjoys camping and spending time with his 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and his wife, Roxanne. Victor Garza, on behalf of the City Council, the residents of Santa Barbara, and your fellow employees, it is a great pleasure to honor you for your exemplary career and outstanding service to our community. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for taking the time today to recognize this milestone in my career. I feel so honored, blessed, grateful, and I'm humbled to be here. I guess you could say it all started growing up in Morro Bay in my dad's restaurant business. And although my dad wanted me to take over his business, I soon realized that I didn't want any part of that. And Councilmember Rouse, you and I have talked about that. So I decided to get good grades, go to UCSB, and become a high school Spanish teacher. But after some student teaching, I realized I didn't want to do that either. Because I was good in math, I was able to get a job with the County of Santa Barbara's road department as an engineering aide, and then worked on their survey crew, and then became a public works inspector. In the early 80s, I worked as a public works inspector in the Bay Area, and then in the late 80s, moved back to the Santa Barbara area where I started a business as a general engineering contractor. After a few years of being in business for myself, I realized that I would be happier if I was working a regular job, and in 1994, started working for the City of Santa Barbara as a public works inspector. Then with the streets division, and then parking. And it's been in parking where I've realized my greatest sense of fulfillment. For me, downtown parking is not about collecting fees from cars going in and out of the lots and garages. It's about serving the people. And in Santa Barbara, parking is all about people and about customer service. It's about developing positive, effective working relationships with all of our customers in our business community. It's a partnership and a collaboration where we work together to solve complex problems with a solutions-oriented approach. It's a concept that was in place well before I started in downtown parking, and one that our staff continues to use every day. Parking is all about people. And today I want to take the time to thank some of those people. Some of them are still here, some are no longer with us. For if not for their love, friendship, and support, I would not be here today. I want to thank my lovely wife, Roxanne, for being such a good listener and being so patient with me when we travel and I wander off into a parking garage to check out parking equipment, signage, and how much they're charging for parking. Or when I have to take a late night call because someone's run over a ticket dispenser or knocked out a gate arm. Thank you to John Flynn for hiring me as an inspector back in 1994, to John Schoaf for asking me to join the Streets Division, and George Girth for entrusting me with being part of the team that would eventually realize his dream of building the Granada Garage. Thank you to my running buddies, Allison, Jessica, Rob, Christy, Jim, Renee, Dominique, Ellen, and many others for keeping me motivated to exercise regularly and eat healthy. Thanks to my PW bandmates, Jessica, Chelsea, Jim, and Russ for joining me and sharing our musical talents with all of you. I want to thank some of the downtown parking staff that's moved on to other positions. Lori Peterson, Malcolm Hamilton, and Brandon Bodette. Thank you for the many years of working to help make sure that downtown parking was always on sound financial footing. I also want to thank Michael Lowe, Becky Jimenez, Roy Forney, and all of the parking coordinators for doing such a great job for the so many years of consistently recruiting, hiring, and training all of those wonderful people that work in the kiosks. A huge thanks to Dion Tate and his maintenance crew and contractors for working so hard every day to make sure that all of our parking equipment works and that all of our parking facilities are always clean and safe. I want to thank all of the staff at downtown Santa Barbara, the police department, and our downtown business community for being such great team players as we work together on the problems that affect our downtown. And finally, thank you, Paul Casey, Rebecca Bjork, and Rob Dayton for asking me to be a part of the city's leadership team that continues to work to make our great city even greater. After 25 years, I still get up every morning excited to come to work, looking forward to many more years of service. Thank you so much for this recognition.
Thank you. Rebecca Bjork is our Public Works Director, been here 30 years. Wow. Rebecca Bjork joined the City of Santa Barbara in January 1989 as the Pre-Treatment Program Coordinator for the Water Resources Division. She was then appointed Environmental Control Supervisor in July 1997, Water Resources Supervisor, January 2001, Wastewater Systems Manager, November 2003, Water Resources Manager, July 2008, and Acting Public Works Director in November 2013, before becoming Public Works Director in March 2014, overseeing the largest department of the city. Rebecca's 30 years of service demonstrates her unparalleled dedication, skill, knowledge, and hard work in serving the city of Santa Barbara. Rebecca was a key player in leading the city's response to the drought, including the reactivation of the Charles E. Meyer desalination plant, which provides a reliable source of potable drinking water for the community. Rebecca, with the support of the City Council and Santa Barbara voters, was an important advocate for bridging the funding gap for long-neglected streets and city infrastructure projects. Her efforts contributed to the passage of Measure C, making these critical projects possible. Rebecca was an instrumental first responder during the Thomas Fire debris flow incident. She provided important leadership within the organization that enabled key staff to respond to our neighboring agencies during this emergency. Rebecca is an engaged and confident leader, known for genuine warmth and caring toward others and for fostering close working relationships. She inspires those around her to dedicate themselves to the highest standard of public service. Rebecca grew up in Claremont, California, and attended Grinnell College. She received her master's degree in public administration from California State University, Northridge. Rebecca and her husband, Brian, have 2 children, Claire and Ivar. Rebecca Bjork, it is my pleasure to honor you today for your 30 years of service to the city of Santa Barbara. On behalf of the City Council, we congratulate you on your admirable achievement.
So I timed this, it's just under 3 minutes, I think. Happy New Year, Mayor Murillo and council members. I am honored to be able to serve this wonderful community for the past 30 years. I graduated from college wanting to work in the environmental field. I wanted to make a difference. Santa Barbara has allowed me to do that. The community and the council embrace doing the right thing and not just doing it as cheaply as possible. And that has made my career with the city incredibly rewarding. I won't take the time to list all the meaningful projects that we have implemented, especially as I realize that others quickly glaze over when I start talking about mean cell residence times and volatile solids reduction. However, I would like to give my sincere thanks to all of the council members I've worked for and the community for the passion and commitment to this wonderful place and the great world we live in. In addition to getting to do very meaningful work, I've had the privilege of working with an incredible team of extremely capable and dedicated people, and I'd like to thank so many of them for being here today. Thank you. The Public Works, the work of Public Works is diverse and touches the lives of our residents and visitors every day. Public Works staff take great pride in the work they do, and it shows. 1 year ago today, with significant storms projected, our street staff spent the night patrolling the city, keeping storm drains and roadways clear. They were among the first to Coast Village Road on the morning of the 9th and stayed there until the road was not only cleared, but clean. Water and wastewater staff went to the aid of the sanitary and water districts, helping restore service to our neighbors. Sometimes they were diverted from this work to assist other first responders searching for survivors or, more tragically, victims. Our capable staff also secure much-needed resources for our great community. They have successfully submitted grant applications for numerous projects, and over the past 5 years, we have been successful in securing over $100 million in grant funding for infrastructure in this community. Projects like the Montecito Bridge replacement, which will decrease flood risk and add a sidewalk for the families who walk across it on the way to and from school. Of course, I wouldn't be standing here today without the support and friendship of so many others. I'd like to thank my colleagues across the city and the whole Public Works team. While I can't name everyone, I do want to thank this council and your predecessors, Paul Casey, the other department heads, the 3 excellent assistants who've kept me on track for the past 6 years, Raquel, Sarah, and Nicole, the Public Works division heads, Joshua, Brian, Rob, Gary, Mike, and Michael, Todd Heldorn, who was the first person who I hired and who's worked with me ever since, and the Public Works Band for bringing us together in a special way. I'd particularly like to thank my special mentors, Bob Roebuck and Chris Anderson, my good friend Laurie, who makes me laugh sometimes when I shouldn't, and my friend Anne, who is always there to support me and who is here today. Finally, I'd like to thank my family for their unfailing support. My parents, Gordon and Susan, are here today. And my son, Ivor, who's a senior at San Marcos High School, is also here and has been driven through numerous towns with wastewater treatment plants or water treatment plants pointed out as important landmarks. My daughter, Claire, is at Davis, and my husband, Brian, is unfortunately out of town on business. You are also important to supporting my career and all other aspects of my life. Thank you.
Margaret Smith, are you here? Here's your pen. You're a public safety dispatcher, 30 years of service. Margaret Smith was hired as a public safety dispatch trainee on January 9, 1989, and soon became a public safety dispatcher. She's known for her calm demeanor and strong performance under pressure. As a certified trainer, she's trained countless new dispatchers. Margaret was one of the original SWAT tactical dispatchers, a position she still holds. Margaret developed the tactical command post in a tube that contains all documents needed to set up a command post anywhere during a tactical incident. Margaret has repeatedly proven herself to be an asset during highly volatile tactical situations where her ability to organize has kept the SWAT and hostage negotiation teams safer. Margaret has worked through many natural disasters, including Painted Cave, the 1995 floods, Stearns Wharf fires, the Gap Fire, T Fire, Jesucita Fire, Thomas Fire, and the Montecito debris flow. Margaret made significant contributions during each event. Margaret continually goes above and beyond, volunteering for department gatherings, Baker to Vegas, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and participating with the police department's recruitment team. She even volunteered to put on the bite sleeve to assist K-9 training. Margaret's expertise and passion is rooted in technology. She's the resident go-to person for all things technical. Margaret's coworkers described her fondly: a rock star, reliable, hardworking, incredibly knowledgeable, and kind. Margaret has earned multiple awards, including Employee of the Quarter and Dispatcher of the Year. Margaret holds UCSB bachelor's degrees in international relations and Asian studies. She became a dispatcher to pay off college loans, but the job itself, which she finds challenging, exciting, and meaningful, inspired her to stay for 3 decades. She enjoys helping our citizens and public safety personnel. The community is fortunate to have had 30 years of service from Margaret Smith, and her continued service is greatly appreciated. Margaret Smith, on behalf of the City Council, it is a great pleasure to honor you for your exemplary career and outstanding service to your department and our community. There you go.
I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I want to thank my friends and family, the police department, and the fire department. Anyway, it's been great working with the city, and I plan on working a little bit longer. And anyway, thank you for everyone for showing up and supporting me.
Margaret, thank you. That closes our ceremonial items. Mr. Casey, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. We will go to public comment just as soon as the room clears out. Carolina Beatty, you're going to be first, followed by Mark Marshall Wofford, Phil Walker, Rick Clausen. Congratulations to all our employees with long-term service. So we'll go to public comment. This is our opportunity to hear from the public about matters that are not on our formal agenda. Please know that we cannot get into a discussion with you in order to comply with the Brown Act. Instead, we'll refer you to Holly Perea. There she is in the back. She can make an appointment with one of us if you'd like to have a meeting, or she can refer you to staff to answer any questions that you might have. So Caroline, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Members of the Santa Barbara City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak with you. Our elected representatives have a duty to pass laws that maintain public safety. In 2018, Democrat Governor Jerry Brown did just the opposite. He signed a law that allowed state authorities to refuse to cooperate with federal immigration officials to remove people who have committed crimes and are here illegally. The consequences of partisan politics replacing a logical and objective analysis have again proven deadly. On December 26th, California State Police Officer Ronil Singh was needlessly killed by a person who had already been twice arrested for drunk driving, had other criminal warrants, and was here illegally. The sheriff for that county said, quote, "Law enforcement would have been prohibited from sharing any information with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement about this criminal gang member," end quote. Because of this Democrat law, now a man has been murdered, a wife has become a widow, a baby will grow up never knowing his father, and a police department has to cope with the heartbreaking loss of a valued member of their team. While another man, having broken the 4th of God's 10 commandments, "Thou shalt not kill," must live the rest of his life with the crime of murder on his conscience. This incident is a tragedy for everyone. Santa Barbara's district representatives in the California State Assembly and Senate are Ms. Monique Limon and Ms. Hannabeth Jackson, respectively, both of whom are Democrats and both of whom voted yes to support California sanctuary state laws, which contributed to the death of Officer Singh. Of course, Monique Limon and Hannabeth Jackson never intended their yes votes to ever even remotely lead to someone's death. Where they failed, however, is to think rationally as individuals, apart from the standard Democrat party line politics. It is in the best interest of public safety for voters to hold Monique Limon and Hannabeth Jackson accountable for their irresponsible lack of leadership, and remember their failure when it is time for elections again in 2020. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you, and may each person listening have a good afternoon.
Mark Marshall Wofford, I don't see you. We'll call him back. Mr. Walker, you come on up then.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. You know, I had the pleasure to work with Rebecca Bjork, approximately 28 of those, of her 30 years. Incredible woman, just a pleasure, very pleasurable to work with her, and she taught me a few things too. And I never knew that she was from Claremont originally, where my niece graduated from Harvey Mudd. Now she's working as a lady engineer down in the San Diego area. So sometimes it's amazing what you pick up if you have longevity too. Okay, my next door neighbor Dave Kruger, he's been a builder in this area for a good 30 years, and he's worked through a construction job on Upper Cold Springs area, and he worked through the Thomas fire. His building site was affected. He was not directly infected on that property with the debris flow, but the adjacent property, he said it was amazing, considering the amount of force that came down with that debris flow. There was a pile of debris on the adjacent property to where he was working, and they pulled a backhoe that had been on that property out of the center of it, and it just looked like you'd crushed a beer can. It was unbelievable, he said. But he noted today, I happened to run into him at lunchtime when he was coming home from lunch. He's my next door neighbor. He said, you know, the regrowth, the grasses and the chaparral and everything's starting to grow big time now, so it's good. Because the big concern has been lack of, soil retention. One other quick thing, my wife's family home was severely impacted by the March 10th, 1999 floods. And the new bridge, I spoke briefly with Rebecca Bjork about it on Montecito, over Montecito, at Montecito Street over Sycamore Creek is beautiful. The contractor did an excellent job. It's almost ready to go in service. But the California sycamore that's actually growing and leaning at an angle out of the abutment area of that bridge is I call it on a high flood, extreme flood flow, an accident waiting to happen. And the contractor agreed totally with me. So it's not a healthy looking tree either. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Clausen. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. Excuse me. 400 years ago, since our founding colonies, and later confirmed by our constitutional framers, Americans have embraced the concept of the citizen legislator, where a farmer or a shopkeeper might bring common life experience to a governing body for a finite elected term and then return to public life. Nowhere across this country is this better displayed today than in local elected boards, commissions, and councils. Then, a little more than a century ago, winner of the unlikely combination of both the Nobel Prize and Academy Award, Bernard Shaw wrote his play Man and Superman, which gave us the line, "Those who can, do. Those who can't, teach." This ridicule has been applied to other career choices and often to politics. The inference is that career politicians have lost, or perhaps never had, any real life skills beyond getting elected. In more recent decades, that belief has encouraged some who claim the rigors of their business experience make them good candidates for political office. We have seen business people run for president on the strength of their professed corporate skills and the unspoken conceit, how tough could it be? How hard could it be? And now we have elected one. There's an extensive public record of all the ill preparedness of the current president for his office. Reciting even a summary would greatly exceed my allotted time here at the podium. But a clear lesson from electing a candidate with no public governing experience is that politics is not as easy as it may look, and you know this well. There is a required temperament and skill set necessary for governing success, which is different from whatever may lead to business achievement. More important to acknowledge is that making sound decisions based on facts and evidence is for the good of a constituency is a skill set in and of itself. It may be an innate skill for some people, but it must be learned through experience for most. This is the relevance for local elected officers. You, members of the City Council, have demanding jobs. You may not always correctly gauge the public's full position on an issue. You may make decisions that are rarely unanimously popular, but they may please the majority without forever alienating the minority. Your decisions may not always reflect the diversity of our community, and they may not meet my own expectations. But I appreciate that you deliberate on the basis of facts, you respect data, you rely on knowledgeable advisors, and you weigh evidence in reaching decisions. Those are governing principles and skills greatly needed at our highest national level, and I thank you for your work.
Thanks. Denise Adams, followed by Anna Marie Gott, Sean Bolus, and Mark Marshall-Wolford to finish us up.
First off, Madam Mayor, Happy New Year to all of you. Very different than a year ago at this time. It was not a very pleasant time, as you know. Anyway, thank you for hearing me today. I'd like to ask you about the homeless issues as relate to Santa Barbara. I see today the police chief is in the chamber. I do not want to be calling the police department every day about the underpass at Cassis Street right off Milpas. And I sincerely appreciate all of your responses to my inquiry. But when I've been calling the police department initially, they said that they were under orders from City Council not to enforce as a result of the Ninth Circuit ruling in the case of the City of Boise versus Martin. And that ruling basically said that you have the right to use public property if there's not a bed available. But as Representative Dominguez knows, we have the shelter right around the corner from where they're setting up the camps. And it's very frustrating to me because a lot of my friends live on the east side, and many of them have small children. And because I tend to be more outspoken and articulate, they say, well, you go talk to the city council, will you do it? And so I do. And I'm concerned because based on your response, then I did some follow-up work, and it appears that because of the Ninth Circuit ruling, which says that you cannot sleep on a public place if there's a bed available and you have access to a bed. Access is subject to legal interpretations, which we don't need to get into, but there's some nuances to the bill. But my personal request is that the dispatch worker, when we call, know that if there is a bed available, that whether it's dialing 211 so that they know there's a bed available, and then again, they could respond to me, and I know it's in good hands. The other question that has come up in your previous hearings on the homeless, perhaps we could track the people, because nightly I see it's the same 5 people out there, and again, the Ninth Circuit had some issues, and perhaps we need a social worker. Maybe they have issues unbeknownst to me. And I come to you in a spirit of compassion, and we want to be law-abiding, but I also don't want to be calling the police department needlessly on issues that could be handled more appropriately. So again, thank you, Representative Dominguez, and to the families that live in the area. I've talked to all the people on all the corners. Most of them are, in fact, I guess all are Latino. Many are predominantly Spanish speaking, and it's a concern. And so whatever the answer is, we want to implement it in the neighborhood, and I'm sure Representative Dominguez will follow through on it. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. Anna Marie Mr. Dominguez, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to respond. One, I'm glad that your neighbors send you Ms. Adams because you are an articulate spokesperson, but feel free to bring them with you at some point. We're always happy to hear from more people. It was a tricky issue after that Ninth Circuit opinion came down because having worked at the Ninth Circuit, I can say this without feeling too bad. These decisions don't give cities a lot of what to do next. They tell you what you can't do or what they're condemning, but they don't really give you a clear path forward. So I think the police department, our city administrator, our city attorney, huddled up and, hey, what do we do in response to this? And I think they acted pretty quickly in light of all the circumstances. And I'm glad to see that we're back on our path of enforcement. And it's just upon you guys, whenever you see something, to be the eyes and ears and to call in. So I just keep encouraging you to keep calling in when you see things where people are breaking the law. That's how we find out. Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Council. First, I want to thank you, or maybe it's city staff, for actually changing the date of or allowing me to change the date of the appeal. As you know, in December, I wasn't given the opportunity to help choose a date and was notified 20 days after I filled out and submitted my appeal for 711 North Milpas that the date would be February the 26th. After weeks of asking when I would be able to look at dates for an appeal. I don't know if it was the city attorney's office, which I was told by city clerk's office, that it was their delay of why I couldn't help choose a date, or if it was something else. I really would like to get an answer on that. I don't know if you are aware of it, but last week, I went to the planning department to look at the plans for 711 North Milpas. Apparently, the wrong plans that were submitted in October, were marked as the plans that were reviewed by the ABR in November as the ones that were denied. Those were not the correct plans. There was a second set of plans that was submitted. The ABR had spent approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes going through those plans submitted in October, asking for additional details and changes. Those plans, unfortunately, that they reviewed in November were not the ones that were marked. I have no idea what the process is at the ABR or in any of the review bodies, but having the wrong plans marked as denied or approved is an issue. Someone needs to look at it and review the process and the procedures that you have at the review bodies in any other department. Because when you are approving or denying plans, they need to be clear. But these weren't, because plans from October and that were stamped as October were the ones that they said were denied. It's ridiculous. Finally, does everybody know about the Mark? It was sold for $56.2 million. You have a decision about the AUD regarding impact fees and inclusionary housing. That was the canary in the coal mine. We need to ensure that all AUD projects have impact fees and inclusionary housing if they did not receive their building permit by
Thank you.
September the 13th, 2017. Thank you.
Sean Bolas, this item is on the agenda for later. Were you going to talk about the skate park proposed for Ortega Park?
I am. I unfortunately have to leave. So I didn't know that. I thought it was for 2 o'clock, so I think.
Well, if your simple statement is, please make the skate park 20,000 square feet.
Or bigger.
We'll let that go. Or bigger, okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise.
That's the main concern. I mean, for the youth, it's very important. I think the youth is going to thrive in the future of skateboarding in Santa Barbara.
Thanks, we can't, We would make you wait until the item was up, so.
That's cool.
But you got it in, so thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So Mark Marshall Wolford, you're our final speaker. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I just want to thank you guys, and I really do have the utmost respect for each and every one of you up there. And what was strange, but I was at that City Hall in Ventura the night that fire broke out, December 4th, Thomas Fire, that is. It was very strange. We were in there for about 9 hours. And Matt Levere, his 4-day-old daughter, his wife, and his other daughter, and we walked out, and there was nothing but smoke, ash, and soot in the air. And he said, "Mark, the whole town's on fire." By God, if it wasn't for the police department, they always gave the fire department everything, but it was the police, the fire department, the Red Cross, and the YMCA that everybody pulled together. And, for the most part, nobody was injured but that one fireman. There was over 1,000 dwellings and all, but anyhow, they said Ventura and Santa Barbara County strong, and the reason being, because we all get along pretty good, is the reason being. But furthermore, I wanted to state something about this MTD bus thing. I've been getting a lot of harassments. There's a guy, Bill Dodge, he wouldn't even take me to the YMCA when my father was dying. I wanted to just get to go vent, and I had to drive all the way back. He said it doesn't go there on the weekends, and I found out that wasn't true. A lot of other things he's done to me and made me pay full price. It's a bunch of garbage, but anyhow, I just want to thank you guys for it. And I want to also start my own organization, like a surf rider does, because I've picked up a lot of stuff on these beaches with them. I picked up 26 pounds of toxic waste once, 27 pounds another time. But out in Isla Vista, I picked up 6 scooters off that beach, those electric ones, just 2 weeks ago off that beach by myself, and took them up 2 flights of stairs with my good shoulder. But maybe somehow somebody can give me the rundown on how to go about doing that. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks. That closes public comment, and we'll go to the consent calendar. Would anyone like to pull an item? There's a speaker slip for one. Oh, would you read the items, please, Madam Clerk?
Certainly. Excuse me, consent calendar. Item 3, a resolution granting the appeal to reverse the Architectural Board of Review's decision approving development at 501 East Mitchell-Taranis Street. Recommendation of the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara granting the appeal of the Upper East Side neighbors of 501 East Mitchell-Taranis Street to reverse the decision of the Architectural Board of Review's decision approving a 4-unit residential development at 501 East Mitchell-Taranis Street and making the findings supporting the action. And I believe that is all to read.
Would you read number 8, please?
Yes. Item 8, setting hearing dates for appeals of Architectural Board of Review's denial of final approval for 711 North Milpas Street project.
Ms. Gott, you filled out a slip. You also addressed it a little bit in public comment. So you talked about the 711 North Milpas, but come up, speak your piece. Bonnie Donovan. Steve Americana after. Okay, so Bonnie, you're donating your time. You have 5 minutes, but you did speak a little bit already, so please be conscious of that. Thanks.
Yes. So I'm actually here today because I am advocating to ensure that we have a site visit the week before the appeal, which is scheduled on March the 26th. The reason I'm asking about that is because the school children will actually be exiting the school at 11:40 a.m. that morning, and you would be able to see how the kids actually use that particular street. The following week is spring break, and if you come there at 1:30, you will not be able to see how the children get to or from the school using that exit, which is one of the entrances for the safe route to school. I also wanted to show you this. If you take a look at this little image, Milpas is on the bottom of the screen. The school entrance, which is the safe route to school access point for the side of Santa Barbara High School, is at the other end. Any child taking their bicycle to or from that particular access point is going to be driving directly behind a vehicle. So can you imagine that if that looks like a parking lot to most people, which is what it's going to be designed to look like, that when a driver exits, they will exit right into a bike lane.
I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to stop your time. Mr. Kalam?
It's rare that I would interrupt like this. The commentary you're hearing goes to the merits of this appeal that is coming before you, and the other side, as it were, didn't know this kind of argument was going to be happening. So that it's fundamentally unfair to allow people to argue the merits of the case before you have the hearing.
Understood.
This actually isn't about arguing the merits. It's about asking that there be a site visit during the school time.
Right.
And that
let me stop you right there, because we did get your email a couple of days ago, and my opinion is that we always have the site visit the day before the appeal. But you've given us good information. You've let us know when we can go out there at a different time from the site visit and see these different conditions. So thank you for that, and we can go out there if we need to. But you've made your point, and I'm honoring the city attorney's opinion.
I
that
don't
this is
think
too much
that
argumentation.
I'm not arguing, because what I would like is, my understanding is that previously there was marks on the ground where all of the parking was supposed to be. And I would like the same thing when you go for your site visit, so you can see where all of the vehicles and the sidewalk and everything are actually going to be.
Okay, would you put that in an email,
I've
please?
already done so, and I've written it actually right
Okay.
here in this letter,
Then
because
good.
I think that would be illustrative not only for you, but for any parents or for any school district representatives,
Okay,
which is why I brought
take
this
up-
piece of paper.
We'll take up your request outside of this hearing. For right now, the item is just to set the date. So we'll go
Which is
ahead
why
and
I
that's what we're gonna
attended,
vote on.
which was to ask that it have the site visit set for the week before.
Okay, we've heard your request. Thanks. Mr. Americana, you're a speaker on this one as well. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Steve Americana. I'm an attorney representing the applicant on this particular appeal. Just to talk about the date. The date was originally set for February 26th, and then when the appellant There are actually two appellants. We appealed the denial by the ABR, and then Ms. Gott appealed the denial as well. She indicated she couldn't make it on February 26, and so it is now proposed for March 26, which is 4 weeks later. And that's difficult for us, but we've agreed to do it because we want to be sure that both appeals are heard at the same time, so you can have one hearing rather than two hearings. We think that's a more respectful use of your time. It does create a bit of a squeeze for us in terms of our timing because we're getting funding from a federal agency. And so I'm here just to ask that if there's any effort to postpone the hearing beyond March 26th, that you don't do that if you can avoid it, because it's important to us and the financing for the project to be sure that the hearing is held in a timely fashion. That's all I'm here to say, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a question for Mr. Americano.
Mr. Americano, come on back.
Do you have an opinion one way or another in terms of when the site visit takes place? In other words, do you care if we do it when the school's in session or during spring break?
I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I think it's to the convenience of the council and the council members and the staff.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Any other items to read? If there's no further objection, we'll waive further reading, and I'll entertain a motion to move the consent calendar forward. Mr. Rouse? A second by Dominguez. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Dominguez?
Just on that last note, I obviously leave it up to staff when they want to schedule it, but it does seem like for that location where one of the key issues in the appeal is transportation and safe route to schools, there was a fatality a block away a few years ago of a youth. I think it might be important to see the traffic patterns either through a site visit or I don't know if we have statistics available from staff, but I think a live visit might be more telling. Or, as you indicated, if there's a way to get people individually, I think you run into the problem there where conversations may take place. With the site visit, it's more controlled. But I just wanted to throw that out there that being the council member for this district, I can present those facts that it is a very important intersection in terms of youth. There are 4,000 youth, K through 12, within 7 blocks of that intersection.
Yeah, and I know that the Sergio Romero incident was in the evening. Mr. Rouse, opinion?
Just a question for the attorney, because this is an ABR issue as opposed to a planning commission issue or a traffic and circulation issue. So is that salient to what we're talking about? ABR is not a land use body, it's a design review body. So I'm a little confused by the...
I don't want the council even to think about that today. So I'm not going to answer directly.
Okay.
That deliberation needs to happen when you conduct the appeal hearing, and I'll be happy to respond then or to make sure it's in the staff report.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. That closes the consent calendar, and we'll move on to item 11, please.
Item 11, appointment of Mayor Pro Tempore, Ordinance Committee, and Finance Committee.
Mr. Casey, is this your item? Oh, it's up to us. Okay. Well, I did hear from Councilmember Snedden that she would like to remain the Ordinance Committee Chair. It's either Councilmember Friedman or Councilmember Snedden to become the next Mayor Pro Tem. So you can't do both. So it seems that a good person for that would be Mr. Friedman for Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Hart has left us. The next senior member on the Finance Committee would be Councilmember Dominguez. And, of course, the Ordinance Committee Chair, she wants to stay there. So if I could have a motion for that configuration of our leadership.
I'll move that slate.
Second.
Okay, Rouse and Friedman. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that looked unanimous. Mr. Casey.
Madam Mayor, if you could just also do a motion just confirming the membership of Ordinance and Finance Committee. I think it was inferred that there's no change from the existing membership, but I think just to include that in a motion would be helpful.
Mr. Rouse, go ahead. You were the maker of the motion, I think. So it...
I'll move the composition of the committees as listed.
Good enough? Second. Okay, and a second from Dominguez on that. And then I guess I will say that if they need me on the Finance Committee, because there's only 2 people, I will sit in as a member of the Finance Committee as the alternate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. That was unanimous as well. So number 12, Madam Clerk?
Yes, item 12, calling of the November 5th, 2019 special election and establishing the council vacancy appointment process.
Is this your item, Ms. Gorman?
This is my item.
Okay.
Mayor and Council, this is brief. This is a recommendation for Council to adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara calling a special municipal election to be held on the city on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019, and directing staff to go forth with the council vacancy appointment process that was previously approved at the regular meeting on December 11, 2018, and begin accepting applications for appointment consideration to fill the District 6 vacancy. So essentially this is calling a special election to be held in November to fill that district seat spot. We will already be having a general election on that date, so we would be essentially adding in the special election to be heard on the same election day. And as we went over at the December 11th meeting, there is a process that Council approved then for an appointment. And just to walk you through briefly what that timeline looks like. On December 11th, Council, you approved the appointment process. January 7th was the effective date of Councilmember Hart's resignation. Today, you would be calling the special election. Tomorrow, the clerk's office will begin accepting applications. We'll both have applications available on the city's website and also hard copies available in the clerk's office. Those applications would be due on January 28th. Applicant interviews would be held on February 5th. And on the next council meeting after that, February 12th, council could vote to make the appointment and swear in the newly appointed council member if they wish to at that meeting. And of course, this is subject to change by you. That's the presentation, and I'm available for questions if you have any.
Are there any questions from council members? My concern would be swearing somebody in right on that very same day, so everyone would have to be ready to participate in the meeting with all the items, but no one else has that concern. I guess if we made it the last item of the day, then that would solve that. Mr. Dominguez?
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, but I think you're right, because that means either everyone is coming here with their families and friends and being possibly sworn in and being up on the issues and have to talk to staff and utilize a lot of staff time, because they're all going to get the city council agenda the Thursday before, and if they think there's a chance, even remote, that they're going to be sworn in, they're all going to be inundating staff with a lot of questions because they're all going to be new, so they're going to have a lot of questions. So maybe it makes sense to make the decision and then swear them in on the 19th.
Do we have a meeting on the 19th? Or there was a holiday? No. Okay. Well, with that... Okay. So the new person would get a couple of weeks to come up to speed. That actually makes good sense, doesn't it? Any other... Mr. Rouse?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I don't know if it would make as much sense to do that or as it would just to put it as the last item of the day and finish your business, then have that. When we did it last time so successfully, it was an evening session, actually. So that may be the way to do it. Not that I like evening sessions, but it may be to split session on the 12th, have our business during the day, complete our business, and have the game show in the evening session.
Mr. Casey?
Certainly, we're flexible with whatever direction council would be. I think the compromise of having it being the last item on your regular agenda is fine. When we did it previously, we had like 60 potential candidates, and so it took more time to kind of narrow it down to the final conclusion. I don't think we'll have anywhere near that number this time, such that I think the process will probably happen quicker. So I think one option is just to have it to be the last item on the February 12th and swear that person in then. And then they can begin meeting with staff during the 2 weeks before the next council meeting.
Yeah, once again, that gives them 2 weeks to ramp up for the actual first meeting they have, which would be...
And if they wanted to bring their family for their first full meeting, they could come and we could make it feel ceremonial. Mr. Friedman, your light's on?
I was going to speak in support of the compromise to do it as the last item. We would still run into the same issue if we waited 2 weeks, because then there'd be a number of them that would have 2 weeks to ponder whether or not they're going to have to go to that agenda as well. So I think the compromise is, I'll be supporting it.
Okay. Any other comments? Is that clear, Madam Clerk? And I don't see any speaker slips.
So maybe I misspoke. I meant make the actual appointment on the 12th in terms of voting for whomever, but then actually swear them in at the next meeting. So they could spend those 2 weeks getting ready for the 26th in terms of meeting with staff on the issues, but not actually have the swearing in till the 26th. And I don't know if that creates any dilemma for you if they're not sworn in, but meeting with department heads. Do they not get on the payroll until the 26th? Is there 2 weeks of salary savings?
Mr. Casey, go ahead. Mr. Friedman's light is on too. So.
I think both scenarios work just fine. Either swearing in at the end of the 12th or choosing who the person will be and then swearing them in on the 26th is equally fine. There's no logistical problem with us meeting with whoever's selected and starting to onboard them. It's like what we would do after someone gets elected, but they don't get sworn in until January. So indifferent either way.
Mr. Friedman.
Just want to clarify for Mr. Colon, there wouldn't be any issues with any closed session for someone who isn't sworn in yet, would there?
Well, that's an interesting question. The Brown Act says that council members elect are counted for the purposes of a quorum between the time they're elected and then between the time they're seated. That section doesn't speak to appointments, as to my recollection. I'll confirm that in a minute. So they would not be able to attend a closed session. We could brief council members elect, but they would not be able to attend a council meeting.
So they would still be privy to the information, they just wouldn't be able to attend the closed session itself?
Yeah, I believe it's a little bit tricky because I don't know precisely the law on attorney-client privilege with council members elect since the Brown Act has been amended to count them as part of a quorum. So I'm a little hesitant to be firmly committed that we could tell them confidential things before they're appointed. But I think you could.
In that case, I just want to, I'd like the new council member to have the full privileges of closed session, because I think we probably will have some at that time. So I support just swearing in on having it as the last item and swearing him in on the same day.
Will you make a motion and we'll settle the question through a vote?
I'll make the motion to have that as the last item with swearing in on that day.
Second.
And a second from Rouse. Any other discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on that one then, since we might have disagreement.
Very good. And this is a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, seconded by Councilmember Rouse, to approve the recommended action with the appointment occurring on February 12th as the last item of the evening.
With the swearing in.
I'm sorry, with the swearing in as the last item of the evening. Councilmember Dominguez.
Doing the math in my head here, I'll pass while I figure this out.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Yes.
Councilmember Russ?
Aye.
Councilmember Snedden is absent. Mayor Murillo?
Aye.
And Councilmember Dominguez?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Good luck to all the people that are applying. They can get the applications now and, okay, tomorrow. Tomorrow, okay. And they're due back, did it say? That's a good one, right? The deadline.
Madam Mayor and council members, they are due on January 28th.
January 28th. Okay, wow, that's a short time frame to get your application in. We'll move on to item number 13, please.
Certainly. Item 13, introduction of ordinance for lease agreement with Beachcomber Santa Barbara LLC at the Cabrillo Pavilion. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the Parks and Recreation Director to execute a concession lease agreement with Beachcomber Santa Barbara LLC for 2,262 square feet of interior space and 1,330 square feet of exterior patio space at the Cabrillo Pavilion, 111 East Cabrillo Boulevard, Santa Barbara.
Great. I see our Parks Department staff here. Mr. Hanna or Ms. Zachary?
Mayor Murillo, council members, thank you. With today's presentation, we'll walk you through the process that we went through to issue the RFP and bring us to the recommendation before you today. To begin, just want to acknowledge the importance of the Cabrillo Pavilion and the council's support for its renovation. It's one of the city's most significant community facilities. It's been in our inventory for 92 years. It's a building and it provides a service that you couldn't do today if the foresight hadn't been there many years ago. We're engaged in a full-scale renovation. It's been a work effort full tilt since 2011, but in our dreams for many more years than that. The role of a restaurant in this building starts with its history and has continued throughout its tenure as a community facility, both in terms of the opportunity that it plays to be synergistic with the role that Parks and Recreation plays in the community, but also as a community destination and a cultural resource and a community resource. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Rich Hanna, and we also have Mark Sewell here, the accounting manager. He's been very involved in this work.
Mr. Hanna.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. Rich Hanna, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. As Ms. Zachary pointed out, we're pleased to be here today after an 8-month competitive request for proposal process. We're going to walk you through a little bit of the lead up to the restaurant concession RFP, the process that we seek to identify and select a qualified restaurant operator, and then come back and seek a recommendation from council at the end of the staff's presentation. So just to quickly touch on what Ms. Zachary mentioned earlier, the pavilion has gone under a full-scale interior and exterior renovation. We addressed all the major building systems, the structural, seismic, access, and safety concerns at the facility. We've modernized the facility for the future of Santa Barbara's youth and the community as they use that facility. And it gives us the opportunity to expand recreation programs, special events, community celebrations, and really draw it back to being a beach destination. So the restaurant at the Cabrillo Pavilion, it's always had a casual dining on Santa Barbara's East Beach. It's a place that people recognize as a casual dining location. We recognize the service the restaurant concession plays to the community. It's the primary location for beach activities and events. We have all of our major summer camps that operate out of the Cabrillo Pavilion and will continue to do after the renovation. We have a lot of special events, large scale, both beach volleyball, Santa Barbara County Triathlon, Reef and Run, that all use East Beach as their place to host their special events. And this restaurant will continue to provide a service to both the beachgoers and the communities for these. And then ultimately, the revenue and the restaurant provide a critical support to recreation programming and operations. All of our rental facilities on the waterfront, including our leases, help subsidize recreation program that we provide to the youth of the community, that whether it's low cost or free or subsidized. And bringing on a full-scale renovation and a renewal of this facility, we realize the responsibility is incumbent on us to maintain that facility moving forward. And so revenues from this lease agreement will go towards keeping the facility at the level when it's turned over to us. So a couple of the key restaurant concession objectives as we moved through this process. If you remember previously, there was minimal interior seating. It was almost cave-like. It was on the side of the restaurant. This renewal process has actually gone in and enhanced the interior seating area to support more sit-down service. That helps when it's colder, inclement weather down there, but we're still maintaining the outdoor popular patio seating and so forth, and both of which will overlook the beach continuing forward. We're looking to extend the operating service hours. The restaurant concessionaire that we're looking to bring on today will continue to provide breakfast, lunch, and actually add a dinner service. We anticipate that service being 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, with some various holidays that they may take as a break. And that's critical when we think about how the building's going to function moving forward. We're planning on operating the building longer days of the week, or longer days of the day, longer hours in the day, longer days of the week. Previously, the building was only open 5 days a week. We're looking to operate that 7 days a week, and the restaurant will play a critical role in meeting all those new program participants and people that are traveling there as a destination. And then finally, obviously, people just harken back to this is a community destination with a beach restaurant. It's something that you think about when you visit East Beach. So just some of the details. The renovated restaurant space increased in size. I talked a little bit about the interior seating. The interior expanded by about 30%. And what that does is allows for more interior seating, and in shifting the back of the house operations, the cooking areas and so forth, to a different location inside the restaurant shell, we're able to accomplish more interior seating, which helps kind of keep that long-going winter season period moving forward. And we're continuing to keep the 72 exterior patio seats, which I think everybody remembers when they visit that area. We're also looking to have a snack bar service there. That's critical for people that are using the beach. This is the only restaurant really within a 3 to 4 block radius of East Beach. People, once they get there, they set up for the day, they bring their beach equipment in, their kids. They don't want to leave, so they've got the option for a snack bar, if not sit-down dining. One of the other things that we created as we moved through the restaurant renewal process is, and the pavilion renewal, is the outdoor barbecue area. We have a designated area on the eastern side of the building that will provide the restaurant concessionaire the opportunity to do barbecues and support community special events. Also potentially help out with non-exclusive catering opportunities, and also supports our other caterers that come in and need a space like that to prepare when they're serving events upstairs. And lastly, the restaurant is uniquely placed to provide catering opportunities for private events that are upstairs, smaller scale events. This is non-exclusive, but we feel like there's a great opportunity to be some synergy between us and the restaurant concessionaire as these services are provided. So some of the key objectives when we launched the RFP was just to step back and look at what we were trying to achieve here. And the number one thing is a long-term partnership with an experienced operator. This is somebody we're going to need to work with collaboratively for the next 10 years and foreseeable 2 5-year periods after that. We wanted to make sure that they actually could provide a sit-down restaurant and a snack bar. That's something that they had experience providing. We've talked a little bit already about the wide variety of user groups and events that currently use the beach, and we anticipate that to expand. Operate daily breakfast, lunch, and dinner services. We also looked at the ability to finance tenant improvements, and this can be pretty substantial. I think in most traditional restaurant transitions, somebody may come in and they want to change the name, the decor, the menu, maybe the staffing. This requires a full build-out. The restaurant concessionaire is essentially inheriting a restaurant shell, a slab floor, no walls. So we wanted to make sure that they have the financial capital to actually come in and actually build out the restaurant to move it forward. And then finally, just the ability to meet the base rent requirements. And we established those base rent requirements with one of our consultants who's not here today, Michael Martz with Hayes Realty Group. And we kind of did some benchmarking, and we settled in on it's approximately $5 per square foot. And we use that as a benchmark, which gets us to $18,000 per month or $216,000 per year as the minimum base rent requirements. So I've learned a lot as we've gone through this process on restaurant concessions, but I'm part of a team. The team consisted of city staff. We had representatives from a lot of different departments, finance department, The waterfront department participated, city finance. We also had city attorney's office, and then representatives from Parks and Recreation. We also use commercial consultants, and so we've got consultants here today, Mitchell Shervin from Anacapa Restaurant Incorporated, and a local restaurant owner-operator kind of advised us as we moved through this process, and Michael Martz, who I referenced earlier as the commercial Hayes Commercial Group Real Estate, also participated on the team. So when we launched the request for qualifications, when we launched the request for proposals, we stepped back and we wanted to launch a qualifications part first. And we did that for a couple of reasons. We wanted to wait till after the pavilion construction started. We wanted to make sure that this was a reality. We were moving forward, and we had a project that somebody as a restaurateur can actually associate with, that the pavilion is going to be built out and ready to operate. We wanted to use the RFQ process to gauge interest in the community and outside of the community in terms of operating a restaurant there. And we did that to avoid any unnecessary costs for potential concessionaires as they kind of put their best foot forward. When we developed the brochure for the request for qualifications, we sent it to a broad range. We actually direct mailed it to 500 businesses, restaurants and businesses here in Santa Barbara. We used social media. We ran some newspaper ads in the Independent, Santa Barbara News Press, and we also worked through Mitchell's contact with the California Restaurant Association, which gave us an exposure of an additional 23,000 industry professionals. So the request for qualifications opened up in early May, closed middle of June. At that time, we received 3 statements of qualifications. At that time, the key criteria that we were using was the vision for the restaurants in line with what we envisioned for the space. Their food and beverage experience, their connection to the community, their ability to finance tenant improvements, and meet the base rent requirements. After we had the initial review, we invited all 3 of the proposals to come up to Santa Barbara. We participated in an interview. We also gave them a tour of the pavilion while it was under construction so they could actually see the space, both the restaurant concession and the pavilion under construction. And at that time, we advanced all 3 through to the formal request for proposal process. So following the RFQ process, we moved to the RFP process. In that process, we received 2 business plan proposals. The third proposal had proposed that they would take over a complete and I'm trying to think of the right word, exclusive rental of the upstairs pavilion. So there was a restaurant component and then exclusive use and rental of the pavilion, second level at the pavilion there. And we really did not feel like it was the right thing for the community. The city has always played a role in renting this facility. We didn't want to kind of change things moving forward. And at the discretion of the team and our consultants, we decided to notify that proposal, and they stepped back from the process at that time. In addition to that, we looked at more in the business plan, the pro forma. We wanted to look further into the financial history and proposed tenant improvements. So we needed to make sure those were clearly articulated in the proposal. And then lastly, several staff and the team traveled to the existing restaurant operations to do a field trip and see if the proposal aligned with what their vision was for this facility. And in this instance, we visited the Beachcomber and Shake Shack at Crystal Cove and the Lighthouse Cafe in Newport Harbor. So that gets us to the selection of Beachcomber Santa Barbara. After going through this process, Doug Kavanaugh, owner, and Vice President Tad Belshi have over 35 years combined experience operating restaurants. They're both here today. Doug Kavanaugh has prepared some remarks that will be available for any questions after the staff presentation. When we traveled down to the existing restaurant operations, we were able to verify that they were successfully operated and validated their proposal to operate the Cabrillo Pavilion and meet the community and visitors' needs at that location. I think most closely aligned, the Beachcomber Crystal Cove supports locals, visitors, beachgoers, and special events at Crystal Cove State Park. The Lighthouse Cafe is in a newly constructed marina park and sailing center at Newport out on Balboa Island. It supports park visitors, camp participants, youth, adult, and senior enrichment class participants, and the Parade of Lights, all things that are opportunities we're looking to offer out of the renovated Cabrillo Pavilion from a recreation standpoint. The lease summary, the initial term is for a 10-year period. The restaurateur and the city have the option for 2 subsequent 5-year options. The exclusive lease area is 3,592 square feet. We envision the initial tenant investment to be estimated at $1.5 million. I talked about the base rent requirement of $216,000. That will increase annually with CPI increases, which is similar to all of our other restaurant concessions here in the city. The first year percentage rent, we've estimated that, we're proposing that to be 8%, and the percentage rent thereafter is 10%. So with that, we have a recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the Parks and Recreation Director to execute a 10-year concession lease agreement with Beachcomber Santa Barbara LLC for the 2,262 square feet of interior space and 1,330 square feet of exterior patio space at the Cabrillo Pavilion, 1118 East Cabrillo Boulevard, Santa Barbara. And at this time, we'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you'd like to hear from Mr. Kavanaugh.
Well, Mr. Dominguez has a question, but maybe it'll be answered by Mr. Kavanaugh. Did you want to make a statement? More than happy to. Well, come on up, sir, please. Yeah. We're happy to get to know you. Are you good with that, Mr. Dominguez? Thanks. Go ahead,
Good
please.
afternoon, Mayor, council members. Doug Kavanaugh. We are literally thrilled for the opportunity here in Santa Barbara for many reasons. One being that I've been coming to Santa Barbara all my life, and I've had 4 nieces and nephews graduate from Westmont, so I've spent my fair share here at graduations. But I happen to be a huge fan of colonial Spanish architecture. So in addition to all the other reasons, I happen to live in a 90-year-old colonial Spanish home, which is very similar, not in size, but in design to this location. So I'm a big fan of renovation and really am passionate about imbibing that feel into this space because it's such a wonderful expression of that period of architecture. So we're very, very excited.
Thank you so much.
Madam Mayor and council members, we also have Mitchell Shervin here who would like to just say a couple of words as well.
Come on up, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I just want to say it was an honor and a privilege to be able to work on this project that's so valuable. I know many Santa Barbans are very excited to see it come back to life, to its former, if not even better, glory than before. It was a privilege to be able to work with Rich Hanna and Jill Zachary and Mark Sewell at the Parks and Recreation Department, and I feel that everyone put a lot of heart and effort into this and making sure that we chose an entity that we felt would really respond to the space, to the beach area, and have a good chance at success in a very challenging environment. Not just the restaurants, but nighttime service, especially in the beach area. I know some have done very successfully with that in our community, and I think the Beachcomber has an excellent opportunity to do the same.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
So, Mr. Dominguez, you have a question?
Yes, and after Mr. Kavanaugh spoke, I want to make it clear you don't get to live in the building. Just regarding the rent, you mentioned, Mr. Hanna, that there's a base rent and then a percentage rent. So is it one or the other, or is it one on top of the other?
Councilmember Dominguez, I'm going to have Mark Sewell speak specifically to that.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dominguez, the base rent acts as the minimum rent that the city will receive on an annual basis. However, we anticipate that in any one particular year, the city will receive more than that because the percentage is really there based on how much turnover they make. So the projections for the building could be any number, but as long as they turn over more than $2,160,000, the city will earn more revenue than just the base. So it's not the base plus, it's only the base if the turnover isn't sufficient, such that 10% of it is greater than $216,000.
Okay, great. So the more we eat there, the more money comes back into the city for public works.
Goal congruent.
Excellent. And then you mentioned there were other people who were part of the RFP. Were there any local restaurants who were part of the RFP?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Dominguez, we did have a local proposal. It was a restaurant operator, and as we went through the review process, we just realized that they didn't have the restaurant experience to actually conduct the build out and actually operate the restaurant at this time. And the other proposal that dropped out was a combination of a local group and a local group and an outside event specialist group. And when they realized they couldn't exclusively rent the upstairs part of the pavilion, they dropped out.
And regarding the timing, the document says that the restaurant will get permits by May 1st, and then have a 120-day construction period commencing upon the delivery of the restaurant shelf space from the city. Where is the city on our construction? Are we looking close to that? I know we were shooting for June.
Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Dominguez, we were shooting for the end of July, which would have given us an 18-month construction. It was ambitious. We're looking more, we'll be opening in early October due to a variety of unforeseen additional work that's needed to occur. 92-year-old building, once you start opening it up, some things are more surprising than others. But that said, the renovation is well underway. We're 50% complete, and we're really pleased with the progress that's been made. It's come along a long way from this time last year when I think we broke ground in January, I think it was January 18th of 2018.
And I can understand with all the construction going on around the Central Coast after some of the events we've had, I can imagine it's hard to get the people you need. So will the construction period for the restaurant then just slide back accordingly? It's just 120 days from when we have it ready to go for them to start taking over?
Yeah. Mayor Murillo and Councilman Dominguez, we work closely with Beachcomber Santa Barbara to make sure that our timing lined up. We've also been working with Diani Construction to make sure their timing lines up. So what you have before you in the lease agreement, we feel very confident that everything should move forward and we'll all be in sync.
So we'll look for a restaurant opening towards the end of fall, beginning of winter, sometime in the...
Late summer, early fall.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have speaker slips, Mr. Casey? I'll entertain a motion at this time. So moving forward, the staff recommendation. Yes, staff recommendation. And a second from Councilmember Dominguez. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Well, that was unanimous. It's good. Maybe good 5 of us. Just we don't need 2 others. Okay. Thank you. Congratulations. And we look forward to working with you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Zachary, for seeing that through. And we will move to the next item. Is that number 14?
Yes. And Mayor Murillo, if I may, I was so excited getting to my item number 12, I realized I didn't read the subject and the title into the record. So I'd like to go back and read the title and the recommendation into the record, and the city attorney has advised to do the motion and the vote once more. So I will read the motion into the record.
Which number is this?
Item 12, the election item.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Gotcha. So that's item 12. Calling of the November 5th, 2019 special election and establishing the council vacancy appointment process. The recommendation is that Council A adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara calling a special municipal election to be held in the city on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019, and B, directing staff to go forth with the council vacancy appointment process that was previously approved at the regular meeting on December 11th, 2018, and begin accepting applications for appointment consideration to fill the District 6 vacancy. So the motion on this was motion by Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, second by Councilmember Rouse to approve the recommendation with the swearing in to be the last item on that day. So I can do the same roll call again as I did before.
Very good.
Councilmember Dominguez? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Yes.
Councilmember Rouse? Aye. Councilmember Snedden is absent, and Mayor Murillo?
Aye.
Thank you.
Very good. We'll move on to 14.
Which I will read.
Very good.
Item 14, Ortega Park Master Plan, and I do not need to read the recommendation to the record.
All right, Parks Department up again.
Mayor Murillo and council members, Rich Hanna and George Thompson, who's our Parks Capital Project Supervisor, here to do today's presentation with me. I just want to make some introductory remarks. We were before you in early May asking you to approve a contract with RRM to initiate the master plan process for Ortega Park and Dwight Murphy Field. We're here today with Ortega Park, and we'll be back to council in about a month with Dwight Murphy. And really the purpose of the master plan is to develop a conceptual renovation plan for this park, for Ortega Park, and for Dwight Murphy. It really follows the process by which we wanted to engage the community in identifying what worked at these facilities, what didn't work, what they envisioned we could have in the future, and then how we'd go about actually achieving that. So we want to walk through the process with you and talk about what the next steps, and ask for your approval on a few items. And just to look back in history, this park became city property in 1902. So today's 2019. It became a park in 1930. Through our community process, we had many people come forward and talk about how they grew up at Ortega Park, and that was probably in its heydays in the 50s and 60s and 70s. We're now in 2019. There's many aspects of Ortega Park that aren't serving the community in the way that they could. We've got aging facilities. We've got areas that are no longer available, including the old splash playground adjacent to the pool. We're at the point where many of these facilities have reached their natural end of life. We need to look at opportunities to replace them and make sure that what we move forward with is going to serve the community for decades to come. And the variety of people, both the neighbors that live around the park, but also the community members that come throughout the city to use the park for any number of reasons, whether they're playing in the field, or they're taking swim lessons, or they're attending a gathering at Ortega Welcome House. So it supports a dual function. We have an opportunity to also address the safety issues that we have at that park and really make it more integrated into the neighborhood and community destination. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Rich Hanna, and he will share some of the slides as well with George Thompson. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Matt. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. Rich Hanna, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. Just quick overview. Ms. Zachary referenced the selection of RRM Design Group. We actually have Jeff Ferber here, the principal. He's available for questions as we move forward. We're going to talk a little bit about the community engagement input. It's a critical part of any master plan, specifically the two master plan initiatives that we have moving forward currently. And then we're also going to walk you through the conceptual site plans, and you were also provided with a copy of the final draft report, which, if you have questions, we're prepared to answer those at the end of the presentation. So just want to talk briefly about the stakeholder meetings, the community engagement. Realizing that there hasn't been a lot of major work initiatives over at Ortega other than fixing existing infrastructure and moving things along, we really wanted to make sure that we kept this process transparent and that whatever input we received through this entire process was included in the final master plan process. So when we first kicked this off, we actually met with key stakeholders. We established meetings over at the Cabrillo at our main office. We met with soccer, youth baseball, youth serving agencies, educational entities, both Santa Barbara Junior High, the high school, immediate neighbors that had come to other stakeholder meetings regarding park safety and misuse. We also had city staff from the Parks and Recreation Department, Public Works Transportation, and Santa Barbara Police Department, all involved in these initial stakeholder meetings, which kind of framed the community engagement component for RRM moving forward into the community workshops. For the Ortega Park Master Plan, we hosted 2 community workshops. They were both hosted at Santa Barbara Junior High School. We needed the space, actually. We had over 150 participants between the 2 community workshops, so they were well received and attended. We had varying times to make sure that we were accessible, so we had one meeting on a Saturday and we had another meeting on a weeknight evening, and so we felt like we gave everybody the opportunity to participate in addition to being able to email myself and Mr. Thompson. And we notified people of these meetings using a very variety of different methods, including everything was in English and Spanish. We used email, social media, window, and site postings. We had the local businesses actually put up meeting notifications. Our youth apprentice program took care of that. We used the East Side newspaper and Radio Bronco. So we tried to cast as wide a net as possible to make sure we had the most participation in these community workshops. We also had boards and commission meetings, which I'll talk about on the next slide. We were at Parks and Recreation and ABR prior to coming here. And we also hosted some on-site meetings subsequent to the August Parks and Recreation Commission meeting in advance of the November meeting as well. What I would tell you about the community workshops is that the first community workshop is really the big picture. What could you have at this location? What facilities and features would you like to see at this park as it moves forward? And that was really led by the design team and having people kind of, what do they want to see there? How does that resonate? And then actually have them come up in a priority dot exercise and really kind of pare down to the initiatives that they were going to move forward to the second workshop. The second workshop was more of the refining. The participants received 2 conceptual design plans. They were asked to choose which design plan they liked, one over the other, and then any of the amenities, they would rank them 1 through 3, and it didn't matter if the amenity was in either design plan, and that again helped us get us to the final design plan that we've moved forward. As I referenced, some of the process throughout this, the public comment, we were at the Parks and Recreation Commission with the Neighborhood Advisory Council for a special meeting. That was in August. At the time, it was extremely well attended. There was a little bit of misinformation out there about us closing Ortega Park Field completely. I would like to say that we've gone out and met with all those constituents and user groups and verified that was never the intent. But at the first Parks and Recreation Commission Advisory Council special meeting, they decided to move forward and advance Alternative Plan Concept B. In October, we took the Concept B to the Architectural Board of Review for preliminary comments. They actually supported the transformative nature of the master plan. Some of their comments were add shade, focus on the pathway design, maximize street parking, include landscaping with the perimeter fencing. And then we went back to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a recommendation to advance it to council. That was done in November, and here we are today. So the primary purpose for Ortega Park Master Plan, some of the key items and objectives that were identified through this process was to expand and modernize existing recreation facilities, add new park amenities, improve park safety, maintain cultural importance for the neighborhood, improve pedestrian access, and increase parking. And these are the initiatives that we'll kind of illustrate as we move forward. So before we do that, I just wanted to, this is a good slide to just kind of orient you to the Ortega Park location and cover a couple of key things. So just by way of orientation, over here on this side of the street, over here we've got Coda Street. This is Solsopuede Street running along the bottom of the slide, and up here to the left is Ortega Street. The Santa Barbara Junior High would be to the top of your slide. What I think is unique when you look at these two pictures, although the picture on the right was rendered for ABR, it's bright, it's shiny, it includes a lot of the same features that we already currently have at Ortega Park. And so in the slide to your left, we've got the instructional swimming pool that's becoming outdated that Ms. Zachary referred to. We currently have the beach or the basketball courts over here, the sport courts, which we also incorporate in the new design over here to the right. The multi-purpose sport field, this whole turf area right now is currently used to support that, whether it's soccer, youth rugby, lacrosse. It's basically a place where kids can drop in. It's unstructured. You can reserve it. But because it's not delineated into any one specific type of field, you can call it multi-purpose. So we currently have that in a turf environment. And we also have a playground here at Ortega Park, and we're planning on proposing a playground as we move forward in the new design also. So diving into some of the key areas as we pull them out of the larger design, it's the expand and modernize the recreation opportunities. The first one would be the swimming pool. What you see before you is a non-competitive swimming pool. We have one swimming pool in this community, Los Baños, and it does not meet the community's needs. It does not have the ability to be programmed with multiple uses at the same time. So a pool in this type of design allows you to have that multi-purpose programming going on simultaneously. We also, in this design, we have the skate park, skate plaza area included over here. Again, we've got one skate park in this community. It's down on the waterfront. It's actively used. As we've gone through other visionings for our park areas, the skate park, skate plaza continues to come up. In the middle of the park area here, we're proposing both a playground and a splash pad. Both of those options can be open to the public without staffing. A splash pad that has jets that bubble up and down and so forth, or a playground are a great opportunity for kids and families to come and recreate. There's no staffing costs or fees to be paid. They're kind of grouped into a central area in the middle of this design right here, which is also our opportunity to kind of expand some of the cultural significance and art in the master plan as we advance this forward. And then over here, we've got the basketball court, and then what Mr. Thompson would refer to as the multi-generational area, but the leisure zone. We over have like full-size bocce ball, ping pong, beanbag toss, and other activities that would keep the park engaged during times when school's in session. Our parks and our turf spaces and our sports facilities are actively programmed from 3 p.m. till as long as there's light, and in some cases where we have light beyond that. And we need to get some activity in our parks during the daytime. And so having an area that's kind of a leisure area for people to come and use the park during times when school's in session, as well as the connectivity around the park, really help us kind of expand recreation to the entire community. Just diving into the multi-sport artificial turf field, a couple of key things here. The intent here is not to design a regional sport complex. Every piece of turf we have in our parks infrastructure right now, our inventory, is used by drop-in soccer groups and so forth. And the impact to those areas from kids playing or adults playing and so forth requires us to close those areas and maintain them on a much more frequent basis. But when we looked at the multi-sport artificial turf field, we looked at it's not just for the groups that you see in front of you. In this case, it's illustrated by baseball and soccer. It would still allow, like I said, the youth rugby, the lacrosse groups. What's interesting about a multi-sport artificial turf field or a natural turf field is if you can see these dotted lines that play across here, it would allow this field to actually serve as 3 different practice fields for the community to use, which could all be used by one group or multiple groups at the same time. The overall field size is 400 feet by 205 feet, which is your traditional soccer field. The smaller fields are 185 by 120 feet. Still plenty of room for kids to practice and for games to take place. Through the process, we reoriented the soccer field, the multi-purpose artificial turf field, to create some more natural grass areas over here along Coda Street. One of the things, as we've moved this process forward, is groups have come forward and said they really like the grass there. That's where they bring their Kaijong classes and some of the other activities. And so we were able to redesign and lay out the field in such a way to keep some of the natural grass spaces as well as the trees. And then the other thing you would notice is we've created space on the sidelines for spectators and families. If you've got families coming, they're going to want to have shade structures. If you've got kids participating in activities, they need to get out of the heat. And so all of these things were factored into this artificial turf multi-sport field. One of the things that I'd tell you, whether this is turf or synthetic, is the use at this field will increase the minute we cut the ribbon. Like I said, there's just not enough turf space. And so one of the key things with an artificial turf field is it does reduce the maintenance requirements, both on a daily basis and more of a regular basis. You still do annual maintenance at that location. Currently, our turf fields, both at Ortega and at Dwight Murphy, we close them for 4 months a year to renovate them. So we have 2 different closure periods at times when we can grow the grass back in. So our fields are closed for 4 months a year. And during that time, we're renovating them. We can only get them back to kind of status quo. We can never really provide that perfect playing surface. And that's one of the advantages of artificial turf, as well as just the less maintenance in general. As we went through the process, the community, through a variety of surveys and stakeholder meetings, supported adding field lights. There's a need for additional lighted play beyond the typical hours. And so it was actually supported 89% that there should be lighting here. That would be something that the Parks and Recreation Department controls through a permit process. There would be fees associated to offset any sort of additional electrical costs. And lastly, I think where there was a significant concern early, and I think we've done a good job of working with these user groups, is to provide equitable access. And I can tell you from the Parks and Recreation Department's perspective, For over a decade, we actually programmed and scheduled the junior high fields as part of an agreement with the school district. And so both the school district, the city, and all of these user groups annually would submit their schedules, and a group would sit down and basically make sure there was fair and equitable use and access to the field. Going forward, for a field like this, when it's renovated, that would be a process that we'd like to bring back and review and implement so that it's not just the group that pays the most or has the largest number of participants. We just want to make sure it's fair and equitable for all user groups. Just to go into the community swimming pool a little deeper, one of the concept designs here is to repurpose the Welcome House. It has been renovated in the last decade, and it already sits kind of uniquely right on the corner there of Sol Se Puede and Ortega Street. So we would actually repurpose that, which means we don't have to add any sort of additional infrastructure to serve as kind of the welcoming area, the concession area, kind of the vestibule as you would enter into the pool. I talked briefly about the flexible pool design. What you'll notice in this design here is you've got this area off to the side, which is like a beach entry. So you would actually walk in as if you're walking in at a beach. It provides that perfect family experience for families that have young kids. They're coming into a depth that's probably about 18 inches. Inside this area, there's also splash jets and cannons and things like that to kind of make it an active recreation site for a lot of the youth-serving groups that we met with. As you make your way further into the pool, you would have some sort of a divider here before what you would consider your traditional lap swimming pool. This is non-competitive. It would be no deeper than 5 feet, meaning you couldn't host large swim meets or anything there. Gives you the ability to have warmer water temperatures. So with a population that's aging in this community, you could have aqua aerobics, lap swimming fitness programs. They do yoga on stand-up paddle boards. All of these opportunities that we currently cannot provide in this community would be accessible here. And then the last component of this is the water slide feature off to the side here. Again, something that we heard loud and clear from the youth-serving groups that use this park in the summertime. The nice thing about having a pool in 3 different areas like this is you can actually close off a section. So in the middle of winter, you could actually have the slide be dormant. You could still be using the collection pool at the bottom of the water slide for swimming lessons and so forth. And we really feel there's an opportunity to build on existing youth programs. Also in here, we've got a separate standalone mechanical room over here to the side. We've got restrooms along here which affront the pool and the skate park and the park as a whole. The purpose there is to actually have one restroom facility that supports both uses. You would have an internal mud wall that would allow the building to serve both park users and the swimming, but without adding an additional restroom to the site. And then we have this pool room over here, which also has additional locker spaces, classrooms, places that people may want to have a weekend birthday party with pizza and so forth while they're using the pool. All of those things could occur here, as well as small community meetings and training classes. Also included in this slide, you'll see the increased parking along both Sol Se Puede Street and Ortega Street. Parking right now is a challenge at this location. It comes up. It was the number one thing we heard as we advanced through this. We realized there's a need to continue to study this and come up with a solution. Changing from parallel parking on these streets to nose-in parking, whether it's angled or 90-degree parking, actually increases the parking that's currently at the park and will actually allow us to serve the park users that are coming in there to use the park for the right reasons. One of the other things that we'd be looking to do is, as we advance this master plan forward, is work with the school district. One of the great things of having a junior high school in close proximity is at times when the park is being in high demand, whether that's summer or evening hours, there's no school, so we'd look to maybe use some of the Santa Barbara Junior High's parking lot to accommodate overflow traffic for people to come in and participate in activities and programs at the site. And with that, I'll turn it over to George Thompson.
Thank you. Throughout the community engagement process, we were very aware of the need to listen to the neighbors, both directly adjacent to the park as well as several blocks away. And a lot of them were part of the community workshop, and subsequent to the Park and Rec Commission meeting, joint special meeting with the Neighborhood Advisory Council, we held 2 additional meetings on site to really hone in on neighborhood compatibility issues. Key to that is looking at the future programs here and facilities. There are several that have the potential to create additional noise. including the proposed skate plaza and more use at the basketball courts. And so both of those items, we're looking at ways that we can reduce noise. And one of the key components that may not have been visible on the plan view that Rich discussed is the use of fence and gates around the park. So one of the proposals on the table under the master plan is to actually fence the entire park and close it at night. And so that would restrict certain activities, both misuse as well as activities that may generate noise after the park is closed. And so we have official closing hours, and technically members of the community are not supposed to be in Ortega Park beyond those hours. It's really difficult to control access without the fence and gates, so currently the master plan does include that. Rich discussed parking, so I won't cover it in great detail other than to say we will be presenting in the next couple slides a way to get a next foot forward on designing the parking improvements, and we'll be certainly working with the neighborhood and neighbors in that design process. Another issue is lighting. So we both have park safety lighting, your standard pedestrian light poles, as well as lighting proposed under the sport field lighting. So we'll be looking at ways that the design can accomplish providing the lighting needed for nighttime play as well as safety, but minimizing the off-site spillover into adjacent houses and other residences. Next slide, please. One of the community meetings that we held in November was focused almost entirely on the community significance and really the history of Ortega Park and how it has been and will continue to be a focal point for the neighborhood and a gathering space. As we go forward with the design, what we're proposing to do, not only for the community gathering spaces, but for each of the breakout design areas, such as the swimming pool, the skate park, the athletic field area. Each of those has its own user group and specific design needs and constraints. And so we'll be meeting with each of those individual groups separately to really flesh out those issues and create the best design possible. Currently at Ortega Park, there's some really great public art and murals dating back to the 70s. As we move forward with design, we'll be looking at each of those individually and seeing, can we preserve it? If we cannot, because of the proposed design, how can we either create a new one or move it? And that'll be an exciting opportunity. For the budget, the design team, RRM group, the budget that basically created the existing master plan, that's the first line there, that $170,000. That's what we've expended to date to create the master plan, conduct all of the public outreach and community engagement. What we're proposing to do for the next phase is to really design all of the public right-of-way improvements surrounding the park. And so that'll have short-term benefits that will be beneficial to the neighborhood, as well as long-term benefits when the park gets redeveloped. And we have a CDBG, a Community Development Block Grant, that's already been awarded to the city, to our department, and I'll talk about that more in the next slide. But suffice to say, for this, we're proposing to use that CDBG funding to advance the next phase of design focused on the public right-of-way. We have about $270,000 in the general fund account for Ortega Park. What we're asking council to do is recommend that we negotiate a contract for the park design using that funding and come back to city council with that specific contract and professional design agreement. And really what we'll lay out there is all the different phases that we may look at for construction. This is a large project, and inevitably we'll most likely be looking at phasing the project. And so when we come back, we'll have potential options for phasing construction. Going back to the Community Development Block Grant, we have $146,000 for this fiscal year. When we applied for that grant back in 2017, we had not started this master plan process. And so initially we looked at the needs of the park, and one of the most immediate needs was the playground. It is in need of a replacement. So at that time, we applied for a grant to replace it. As the master plan process went through the community engagement process and the plan before you was developed, we saw the need to really focus on the envelope of the park as the first step. And so that's what we're proposing to do with this CDBG funding, is really take that first step to design all of the parking improvements, the pedestrian access improvements from the right-of-way, potential undergrounding of overhead utilities, and also dealing with stormwater. And with that, I'll turn it back to our director.
So, Mayor Murillo and council members, we are seeking your direction to move forward with the next phase of this project. And as George Thompson indicated, take the grant funds that we have, and we have got approval from the CDBG Advisory Committee to do this work. No matter how long it takes us to implement a renovation of Ortega Park, pedestrian access and parking improvements will serve the neighborhood, will serve the school children, will serve today's parks users. So our recommendation is that we move forward with that design work. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding what those next phases would be. We've always considered this a project that once the concept plan and the design is created, that we would strategically look at opportunities to phase it. And as you can see from the design, it could be that we move forward with field improvements first and other aspects second. We look to the opportunity to take advantage of different funding sources as they present themselves. And being prepared with this project to move forward uniquely positions us to be eligible to acquire or apply for grant funds. You need to have your entitlements, or you need to have some clear indication that there's both political support and that we've gone through the design, development, and environmental review process that shows that it's a real project and it can be built. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Very good. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Thompson, you mentioned the potential for fencing and potentially closing the park after dark, but in the same slide we talk about lighting. So are there going to be two sets of, is the park going to be bifurcated? Are we going to have like the playing fields, for example, be lighted at night, but obviously not the pool area? Is that kind of the idea, and how does that work?
Mayor and Councilmember Rouse, what we've looked at for potential activities that may be permitted at night, after the park is officially closed, certain activities could be done in the park by permit only, such as a youth activity on the playing field, a community event at the swimming pool. So we would have that by permit. Otherwise, the park would be closed. However, we would still have the security lighting on within the park. And so that would be the egress lighting. The field lighting would not be on unless there was a permitted activity there.
And so given the residential proximity to the park, will there be limits on, for example, the number of nights that you might permit or schedule for events, frequency-wise?
Mayor and Councilmember Rouse, at this preliminary stage, we haven't really explored the frequency of events or really the type of events that could happen there. That'll be really one of those breakout sessions as we move through preliminary design. But certainly the neighbors would be taken into account for potential effects for noise and lighting and parking and so forth.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Rouse, just to add on to that, currently all of our sport fields that are lit actually go dark at 10 p.m. So we don't extend beyond 10 p.m. any given day of the week. We would certainly be looking, if we were going to add beyond the typical 5-day typical adult sports section, sports offerings, what impact that would have on the weekends. The other thing to think about is, as the sport lighting has improved over time, it no longer kind of casts up into the atmosphere and to the neighbors. It can actually be very focused on the playing surface. So it has less of an impact on the neighboring residents as it did before.
Mr. Friedman?
Great. I had a couple questions. You've answered some of them, but the first, getting back to the closure at nights, you mentioned that there would be fencing. Can you speak to the type of fencing and how tall is it going to be and the aesthetics to it? And then I'll follow up with the questions after that.
Sure. Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Friedman, the design drawing gives you a general sense of what what was presented at ABR, so Architectural Board of Review. So the project does have to go through design review. If you think of fencing that we have in other city parks, like Chase Palm Park along Cabrillo Boulevard, and also the new fencing we put in at Cabrillo Ballpark recently. It's open, so it's like a rail fencing, so you can actually see in. It's designed to be aesthetically pleasing, but not offensive in terms of a barrier. The advantage of the fencing also is it really delineates the space, and it allows us, we work closely with the police department regarding park issues and park safety, and it says when the park's open and when it's closed, and it helps us with any enforcement needs that we might have.
Great, thanks on that one. Just a couple other follow-ups. You answered most of this. I just wanted to say I appreciate the approach to how it's being funded, and the reason for this is to have a shovel-ready project, so as funding becomes available, so it would get phased in. I think that's important to understand. So this is a great project, and for it to be able to move in as funding becomes available, whether local or states resources, it's key. So appreciate that. You also mentioned briefly the issue of staffing. Can you speak to the staffing? Is there an increase in staffing? And then also, you and I had talked about the pool in particular, which we mentioned, but potential partnerships for the use of the pool that could benefit the community as a whole.
Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Friedman, Rich Hanna mentioned we anticipate that the daily maintenance of the actual field will go down. So we'll have sort of staff savings on the park operations side. The areas of the park that are open to the public, like the splash play area and the playground, won't require any new staffing. The concept of bringing in a more of a community pool means we would be looking at operating something like that year-round or more months out of the year. Currently, right now, the Ortega Park pool is only open in the summertime. We are very creative as a department in developing partnerships and co-sponsorships and sharing of space. We have a number of nonprofit organizations that are able to come in and operate out of our space. We clearly need to provide the oversight as the agency and as the owner and the operator, but we would be looking to advance those partnerships. And essentially, to some extent, the additional staffing that would be required really is to enhance a community service rather than just doing what we're currently doing today.
Great. One final question. And this gets into a discussion we've had at the council on previous parks items, but looking comprehensively at our parks system, how does this fit in with that, and specifically allocation of resources? What I want to get to is it's not taking away, moving forward with this wouldn't be taking away resources from other parks throughout the city. We're moving forward with Dwight Murphy as well, so it's not an either or, it's not Dwight Murphy or this, correct? If you could speak to that issue. And that's my final question.
Sure. Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Friedman, Ortega Park and Dwight Murphy are some of the largest parks that we have in our inventory, and they are used broadly by the community. And so the number of people we're able to serve in those parks is tremendous. We have wanted to undertake field improvements and really tackle these locations for a long time. In the interim, we have been doing a number of other projects around town, like Kids World, which also serves as a number of children. This type of project is going to be different from something that we might do in a small neighborhood site because we can scale it down. In this case, getting this project ready could perhaps position us well for bond money that's coming forward. In the Dwight Murphy Field case, we're working with the Strong Foundation, and we'll be back before you at the end of January, where there's a partnership with the foundation to help fund that project. So we're being strategic and opportunistic with the idea that both projects can move forward. One might come before the other because opportunity knocks first there, but having them both ready means we can, A, service a number of people throughout the community, plus the neighborhood, and then also leverage a number of sources of funds.
And that also includes other parks throughout the city as well, not just focusing on those two. So we're strategic citywide is what I'm getting at.
That's correct. We actually, I did a quick count. We recently completed 10 different projects in our city parks. Those are just off the top of my head. We've got 14 that we're working on now, and these are 2. So we're working on other projects throughout the city, and they all get going, and then they come to fruition at different times. And then when we come forward in future years, there'll be other areas that we'll be looking at tackling. It's been many, many years since we really reinvested in our park and recreation infrastructure. And so we're really trying to be comprehensive about defining what's needed and then being strategic on how to move it forward.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When it comes to the turf, I've seen studies that state that some turf material is actually toxic to the environment and to people. So can you just elaborate a little more on what type of turf you're going to be using and how you're going about setting it up?
You have a turf expert here.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Jeff Ferber, principal at RRM Design Group.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Jeff Ferber from RRM Design Group. It's a good question, and that's been a concern statewide in school districts and cities. The material you're referring to is the infill, and that comes from repurposed automobile tires. We're doing fields currently, and many agencies are taking the approach of only using organic infill. So there are options. The debate about turf versus grass does continue in terms of safety, aesthetics, environmental issues, but there have been movements forward to be able to install a field that has less of the toxic off-gassing.
So is this infill, they're just shredded up old tires?
That was the model, and that's the little black, like when you watch an NFL game and the guy cuts and you see this cloud of black. That's the rubber infill. They now manufacture fields where you have the capability of using, including cork and other natural materials. It does change some of the maintenance requirements. Synthetic turf fields do require a certain amount of maintenance and water in order to keep them in good shape. They last longer if you do the maintenance, but it's no longer a requirement to use one particular type of infill.
And what's the danger for when it rains? Is there a chance of that infill making it into the gutters or into the watershed?
Well, generally you grade the park in a way that the field drainage is down through the field. So, yeah, I think that you can manage that. And with the C3, with the storm water requirements, there will be bioswales and other facilities within the park where the water is not just sent straight off the site. But I think in general, we would advocate an approach where you use an infill that parents and others in the community are more comfortable with the product.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? We have some public speakers, and we have a translator today. Tenemos un traductor. Señor Cerecedo, por favor, haga una declaración.
Thanks so much. Carlos Cerecedo, Judicial Council Certification 300249. I'll be helping out those who prefer to speak in Spanish. Voy a ayudar a aquellos que prefieran expresarse en español. When you come up to the front, I will help you out. Cuando vengan al micrófono, los voy a ayudar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Jeff Shelton, you're up first. Our public speakers get 3 minutes. We hope that's enough for you to express yourself.
I hope so.
And you'll be followed by Naren Porter Kasbadi, and I hope I got the name right. Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for letting me say something about this. I too was I played at Ortega Park in the 60s and loved the park. So I'm and I don't want to say the master plans are great things. We need one for Ortega Park. It's past its time. So, and it looks like they've done a thoughtful job. I'm here to talk about 2 issues. And they basically are about the idea of what a park is. And the 2 issues that I have problems with are the fences and the fake grass or artificial grass. Seems like everybody's lost their minds here about we're building up. I don't know how it got started. We're going to build a public park and fence it off. One of the great things about Ortega Park and mini parks is you drive by there and see guys playing soccer with 2 bicycles as the goal, with a rope above it. It's beautiful. Games just come and go there. It's not formal. It's a beautiful park for everyone to play any type of game. And then we're going to put a wall around it. You know, some guys trying to put a wall, between things these days. And here we're stopping the beauty of that park flowing. I know the police are recommending a wall, a fence, a gate to control things, and already we're controlling so many things, where we can dance, where we can have drinking establishments, where we can have live music, and now where we can go have fun with a soccer ball or frisbee. Somehow it'd be great to have a fenceless park, of course, around the pools and some other locations. But keep it, this is a people's park, and keep it that way. And to see families just roam onto it next to games and watch it. This is where it should stay. I'm not a skateboarder, but it's great to have a skateboard park in there. They're great. They're great stewards of the land. They're there all the time, eyes on they're going early in the morning, in the evening. They sort of police, self-police the place. It'd be great to have them when they can show up early and not have to wait for the park to open. So no fences. And where does the fencing go? I mean, the mentality will go, do you go to Shoreline Park and put a fence there because something's happening, or Ledbetter Beach? Where are we going to go with the fences? So I'd love to keep that open. And then the other part is this artificial grass. If you've ever played on our artificial grass, I don't think you would want it to go there. First of all, it is toxic. You're on a hot day, the fumes are terrible.
Could you wrap your
yes,
thoughts?
The stuff that comes up they're talking about is it makes you cough for a couple weeks. And by the way, the lagoon does fill up there. That does fill up there with water. It doesn't drain off. It fills up. You can do rowboats across there during big storms. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Shelton, thank you. Naren Porter Casbati, followed by George Nagai, Victor Reyes, and Sebastian Aldana Jr. will be the final speaker. Please tell me your name.
Naren Porter Casbati. You're super close. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
I just want to say thank you for having us today, and I look forward to the park remodel and can't wait, especially for the new skate park. And I'm just looking forward for the park to come, and that's about it. I'm just here to support and show that we're here for a great park, and I think it's going to be really good for the community and for the kids, and it's going to be a really good place for decades to come.
I'm going to ask you a question. So you think the skate park that we have now, that's not enough of an opportunity for skating?
No, definitely not. The park was built in about 2000, 2001. It's kind of outdated. Skateboarding is going to go into the Olympics in 2020. And, there's one skate park from Ventura to Solvang. So we definitely need another one that has the equipment for people to grow. And at the skate park we have on the beach, all the ramps are pretty small. There's nothing with real good transition. The street aspects, there's no good handrails or stairs or anything that you're seeing in any of the major sports associations like Street League. There's none of the obstacles in our park that are going to be in those contests. Same as well with like the vert skating. We don't have a bowl that has vertical transition, and all the contests in the world have bowls with vertical transition. So we're kind of lacking in the department of the correct park for kids to really grow. They hit a max at our park. You can only really learn so much and do so much.
So Skaters Point would be good for little kids?
Yeah, no, it's still a great park. It's super fun. I go there almost every day.
Okay.
But having something else that can really have the kids grow and move on. I'll drive down to LA on my days off to go skate the skate parks down there, and a lot of kids don't have the option to. Their parents don't have the time or the money or the resources to take them out of town every day. I own Lighthouse Skate Shop as well. We have one kid on the team. His family actually just moved down to San Clemente, so their child can skate and progress because he wants to be in the Olympics, and we don't have those places here where he can actually learn and progress.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate your information.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right. George Nagai.
Hello. My name is George Nagai. I want to start by thanking City Parks and Rec, Council, and staff for your continued support of skate parks in Santa Barbara. I'm very excited about the revamp of Ortega Park. Our city needs quality venues for active recreation, promoting healthy lifestyles, and enhancing the culture of Santa Barbara. The inclusion of a skate park here will help to satisfy the demand for safe and legal places for skateboarding, while simultaneously complementing the other athletic features of an upgraded Ortega Park. A skate park at Ortega Park will get skateboarders off the streets and minimize the damage to public and private property that skaters are so often blamed for. Skate parks also offer our city beneficial economic opportunities such as employment of park and programming staff and the demand for local skateboard retail shops and services. Also, as no two skate parks are identical, a premier skate park attracts out-of-town visitors to come spend money in our community. Some may remember when Ortega Park was home to Skate Si Puedes, our modest but well-used wooden skate park back in the 90s. Looking at the results of more recent Ortega Park community workshops, skate parks prove themselves to be amongst the highest in demand. It is time for Santa Barbara to answer the call with the release of Skate Si Puedes 2.0. I know we are not in the design phase yet, but if I could promote but one idea, let's think big. Larger skate parks are more effective by safely accommodating more users, offering a greater variety of terrain, and overall more fun. I love Skaters Point and was involved in the design of it, but at 14,000 square feet, it is often overcrowded, making it dangerous to navigate, and admittedly, as Naren mentioned, it is somewhat dated in design. That's not to say that Skaters Point isn't a good park. It simply shows that its size and terrain do not meet the demands of our community today. Examples of other California cities working to develop better skate parks would include Santa Monica, which opened their 20,000 square foot skate plaza back in 2010, and Linda Vista, which more recently opened up their 35,000 square foot skate park just last year. Today, skateboarders are looking for ledges, railings, stairs, and other common urban elements, as well as the curved transitions of bowls, ramps, and pipes to practice their majestic maneuvers on. A larger, well-designed skate park would be able to accommodate these needs, making it more triumphant for our entire community. I support a new skate park at Ortega Park and also encourage Santa Barbara to maximize the opportunity by making it a 20 to 30,000 square foot skate park, incorporating bold and innovative designs. Thank you.
Thanks. Victor Reyes, come on up. I see Ms. Zachary taking notes on your suggestions for the skate park, so thank you. Mr. Reyes.
Hi, may I ask a favor? Could you put up the photo of the park from with the Welcome House out? By the way, while he's doing that, I'm going to echo what the gentleman just said. The park is not meeting today's skaters' ability. They need to be challenged. They're very good skaters. I suggest the National Armory. I also echo the park. I also echo the park usage. Do away with the fencing. Provide plenty of space for citizens to use the park. Come in. Do away with the fencing. Isn't that nice? Isn't that a nice photo? Do you see something there? There's another one. Can I see a closer one of that? The one that follow that? No, go ahead. Go back. One more. One more. One more. Oh, forget it. Well, let's go back to the one that you showed me the first time. There you go. There you go. That's a good one. Do you see something there? All the clutterness? You see the skate park? Wouldn't it be somewhere else better used? Wouldn't a green grass there for picnics would be better? Wouldn't a bigger swimming pool where it is now be more accurate? or more appropriate? Wouldn't a welcome house be a little bit bigger with tables out there for barbecuing, kind of like Oak Park, where families, cities, teens, leagues could have annual, or groups could have annual meetings there, or meetings or barbecues? A park. See, I went to a park like this in LA to take my grandchildren. Where the photo that shows the street parking, it is terrible. What a nice dream it is to have both streets, Ortega and Salsipuedes, with very few parking spaces, with very few cars on the side curb. Could you show that picture again? Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be that dreaming? I live in that area. My parents live, I grew up in that area. That's a dream, having so much parking space. Right now, the way it is, you can't even park. And look at that much space for parking on the street. That's beautiful. I wish I could live in a park like that, where I could have plenty of parking space. I commend you. You did a very good drawing. That's a great job. Well paid. I do love it. I do love it. I just think that that's a dream. It's not reality. It's not today. Today's skaters are more skilled than they were 20 years ago. The kids that I see down at the park, they're more skillful. The National Armory is a great place for it.
Thank you so much. Okay, Sebastian Aldana Jr. Final speaker.
Hello, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Sebastian Aldana Jr., Eastside resident and property owner 3 blocks away from the park. First of all, Rich and George and staff, you guys did a great job. I would actually say that all input and information is accurate. Don't take it wrong, but sometimes it's hard to come by, But they did it's a great job. And speaking for myself, the fence around the field. I would not like to see that around the pool. Let's just say the other half. I understand that we would probably have to have a fence, but if we can start but do one half fence and the other half no. If it creates problems with an open field, and then consider it then. But other than that. It'd be a great improvement. I did receive a call from an individual that lives across the street, and if I could speak for him, for the record, his name is Mario Reyes, and this was his request for me to say something because he was not able to make it. I told him to make it. He said, I can't make it. But he, like Victor, he mentioned if it could be at the skate park at a different place, the Armory, Veracruz, Alameda Park, and make it bigger because I did attend all 4 community meetings, the 2 other presentations, and there was a couple of times when they wanted more space. So his recommendation was to give them the space, but just at a different location, and then this way maybe the pool area could be bigger. Maybe the splash pad in the pool area, and he just felt it was a AUD of a park. Those were his words. I just the messenger on that one. Thank you.
Thanks. That closes public comment, and we'll bring it back to the council. I'll start. So the fencing was proposed because of safety issues or the sense of place. Ms. Zachary?
Madam Mayor and council members, if we are to pursue an artificial sport field, we would need to manage access, and fencing is one way. It's a primary way to do that, and that's an issue that we've raised consistently when we've talked about it. Sure. The pool as well, and then you're at about 2/3 of the park, and then just thinking about how how we want people to access and use and flow through the park. To offset that, if you consider some of the visuals that we gave you, there is an idea of a pedestrian paseo through the park when the park's open, around the perimeter of the park. So the idea is to have a much more inclusive and broader use when it's open. We did hear consistently from the police department their support for a fence, because that helps address enforcement considerations outside of the safety issues that we have. So there's a balance there. As we move forward with developing design plans, all of the input that we received today and have received before will be further considered as we evaluate what the ultimate design of the park would be. Those are the concepts that have come forward so far.
I know, and I know you've had a lot of meetings, and I do support the fencing. You're right about the balance of it, and we're trying to make our parks more safe, and the police are there all the time. I mean, or they have been paying attention, so I respect their opinion, and I would support the turf grass if it's to make sure that it's environmentally friendly. That's just me. Councilmember Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mrs. Zachary, so given the configuration of the park and all the amenities it has, it appears that there's going to be more staffing than there was traditionally there. Is that correct? Or in terms of having a pool there and having what I remember is playing basketball there on Saturday mornings frequently, and the first job was to deal with the people that were there before we started playing basketball. And so now with all this, it seems like there would be staff on hand. What is the staffing, what staffing needs are anticipated, and what would the makeup of that staffing be?
Sure. Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Rouse, as we further design the pool concept, that's really where the staffing would be focused. People will still be able to drop in and use this park, and it wouldn't require staff to be at the basketball court or be at the skate parks. We don't have the resources for that. It's not what we do today, and it wouldn't be feasible to do that in the future.
Well, I know that some of the issues, would be enhanced by staffing, like more in in the form of a park ranger, perhaps, and whatnot. And I didn't realize the staffing limitations are there. And as I looked at the amenities, I just saw the needs for personnel for supervision, like I said, with the pool and all that, and and then if in terms of the pool and the usage and all that, is that like Los Banos, where to be a fee-driven situation, or would there be? How does that work?
So I'll ask Rich Hanna to answer that, but there's a combination of ways for us to generate revenue, just like we do elsewhere, but also our goal is to provide free and low cost, which we do right now at Ortega Park.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, so we would pick up some of the successful components from Los Banos. So we would have your typical drop-in fee. You can buy a 10-visit card, which is significantly discounted. So you'd have access for paid programming. One of the things that we recognize through this process is the Girls Incorporated on the corner, Boys and Girls Club, all of these youth-serving groups in the immediate area, they currently come and recreate at Ortega currently, and we'd be working with those groups to provide lower cost access or partner with them to do swimming lessons through their funding supporters. And one of the things that I think goes unnoticed at Los Banos is we have agreements with City College and Santa Barbara Swim Club that actually pay to use our facilities. We actually staff the facility and provide them with a facility that meets the current health codes and safety requirements, but they actually pay us rent to use those facilities, and that would be another way to generate revenue from a year-round swimming pool without passing that on to the casual user.
Thank you.
Mr. Dominguez?
I want to start by thanking all the people who came here to comment today. And then, as Mr. Aldana mentioned, several of you were at several of the workshops. And that's great, because without the input, we couldn't get this plan done. And then I want to thank staff for holding all those workshops and getting the input and rescheduling things as things were required, and really reaching out and just going the extra mile to make sure everyone was heard. I think it's a great master plan. I was intrigued by the concept of the skates skateboarding maybe going to the Armory and having a bigger facility. I don't know anything about the state of the industry now and whether there's the need and the capacity. But if there is a need and we can get youth that facility, seems like that's something we might want to look at down the line. And in terms of the turf itself, I agree. There's nothing like real turf when it comes to sports. I played soccer and rugby for many years, and it's great because you eventually hit the turf and it's more forgiving. But to the extent it gives us more capacity, I think it would be great to look at what some people were talking about as well up here on the council. What's the master plan for the whole city? What is our park use? What are the trends? Veracruz Park is a park I'd like to see maybe some of its turf programmed a little more to provide that real turf experience for these leagues. And that's really it. So I want to thank again everyone. I think the return on the investment at parks for our youth is so high nowadays with how much we're trying to push for community engagement, for getting youth out of their screens, their phones, their iPads, their computers, to get them out where they're interacting with other youth. The return on that investment is so incredible. And to the extent we can afford to do that and make that happen, this is a great opportunity. So I'd love to make the motion for these 3 recommendations.
Very good. Is there a second? There's a couple of lights on. A second from Mr. Friedman. Mr. Gutierrez had his light on before you, though. Friedman, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When you say fencing, did you describe what that would look like? Is it just regular chain link or?
Mayor Murillo and Councilmember Gutierrez, we did it through the design concept that was presented to the Architectural Board of Review, present a style of fence that we've used in other park situations, including, if you think of the one that's along Chase Palm Park, that's adjacent to Cabrillo Boulevard. So it's not chain link. It has, it's thin metal poles. Same thing around Cabrillo Ballpark, where we had a portion of fencing that we upgraded from chain link to something more aesthetically pleasing. The idea is that it blends in with the environment. It's not something that presents itself as a barrier that stays out, but really defines the space and allows us to manage that space more effectively.
So it would be closed during certain hours of the day?
I'm sorry?
Sorry. So then that part of the park would be closed to people during certain hours of the night?
Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Gutierrez, yes, we have formal park opening and closure hours that are enforced through our park rangers and also, when needed, the assistance of the police. And so, yes, we would establish the formal park hours, except as we also mentioned, we have in a number of locations the allowed use of a park by permit outside of those normal hours. So it could be used up until 10 o'clock for whether it's a sporting event, a community event, some other activity that occurs in a park, which we do have regularly throughout the city.
Did you possibly think about, instead of fencing, just putting up surveillance cameras to deter people from being there?
Mayor Murillo and Councilmember Gutierrez, we actually have some cameras there already, and it does enable there to be an investigation and hopefully to look into if something occurs there that requires legal follow-up. The concept of fencing, again, is still conceptual at this point. So as we move forward with the project, we'll be taking in the considerations that we've heard and looking at design options and thinking of all the alternatives for safety. We have an ongoing issue of use of that park outside normal park hours, which has an impact on the community that we're trying to find a way to mitigate, both through the redesign, bringing people in throughout the day, and then also to minimize the use of the park when really it's not supposed to be used by the public.
Thank you. I think this is great. My concerns are the turf and how that could affect the environment and the people that interact with it, and also the fencing. I'm well aware. I grew up going to that park, and I'm well aware of the issues that it's had throughout the years because they were there when I was a kid. And I would feel like more surveillance would probably deter that. But I am supportive and a little bit jealous of what the park is going to be for the kids in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedman.
Well, thank you first to the community for all your input that got us to this point, and everyone who attended the meetings, and our staff for having a not necessarily a new model, but they've kind of prioritized of working with the community up front to a greater degree that allowed for this collaboration. I would say in terms of the fencing, continue that, work back with the community, because I know that on the one hand there's the aesthetics and there's use of the park, but I also know there's a lot of issues that are taking place there, and the community who has to, the immediate neighborhood have to live with this park day in and day out. So taking into consideration their views on the safety balance versus the aesthetics is important. You already have a process that's got us to this point, so I'm sure you can go back to that process to include them. I'm also pleased to see that this takes into account recreation opportunities for not only families, but for residents of all ages. You mentioned seniors is a big component of the future there. In regard to the skate park, the one issue that I appreciate you coming forward, I learned a lot today about skating, and is if that component of it is too small to meet the needs that they addressed, I would like us to see if there are other, as we're exploring this, if there are other alternative sites that could meet the needs that were expressed today. Because what my fear would be is that the site's too small, and then we build a skate park that doesn't meet the needs, so you end up having two parks that are outdated. And so if there is another opportunity, but what I don't want to run the risk of is taking out the skate park and then not having an alternative, so then we still have just the one. So that's a balance I'd like you to kind of flesh out and see what other alternatives there are. And the last component is the art. I think that's huge, to continue what's there, but also offer new opportunities for art in public places. It's a really exciting opportunity. And art really brings a sense of community. We have local artists, opportunities there to showcase their work. So overall, I'm pleased to see this is going forward and supporting the motion.
Thanks. And I'll add that we're in the coldest part of winter, but in the summer, that getting wet opportunities are going to be wonderful for the kids and adults too, maybe, hopefully. The splash park too is going to be really very nice. So the motion was by Dominguez and second by Friedman, and it's to move forward the professional services agreement with RRM Design to go for the CDBG grants, and then I guess, 2 professional services agreements, the consultant. So there they are, up on the board. Are we good? Any other discussion? Madam Clerk?
Okay. This is a motion by Councilmember Dominguez, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Friedman for the staff recommendation for item 14. Councilmember Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Yes.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Sneddon is absent. Councilmember Dominguez?
Yes.
And Mayor Murillo?
Aye. That was unanimous, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yay. Thank you to our park services, our consultant. Thank you for being here. And we'll close that item. To the skaters, thank you for coming out. Stay engaged, please, in our process. Señor Cerecedos, gracias. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item, which is our committee assignment reports. We've been on a break for about 3 weeks. So we have some stuff to report. I do. Anybody? Okay. This morning I attended the Downtown Santa Barbara Board of Directors meeting. The holiday parade was a success. It generated good cheer and revenue for downtown Santa Barbara. They're also putting forward a program promoting their retail members, a part of it through e-commerce. The Home for Good subcommittee met, and it was the first meeting about how to create a day center for the homeless downtown. And on that same subject, I attended the Longest Night event. It was the winter solstice, where we honored, along with the faith community, the homeless who've died on the street in the last year. I attended the Air Pollution Control District meeting. That was December 20th. They have some new low-cost air quality sensors that they'll be using. And also in terms of air quality monitoring, they're making some changes on the stations all around the county, but it'll improve monitoring air quality, especially during wildfires, which their website got a lot of traffic during the fires, obviously, when we were all choking on the smoke. Over the break, some of us went to the Cabrillo Pavilion to check out the construction site coming along, as you heard in the item today. My Women's Summit did a self-defense training. That was over the holiday break. Had a lot of women there. I attended the Coast Rail Coordinating Council. That's one of the subcommittees of SBCAG. And the group is putting together a joint powers agreement, memorandum of understanding, and they're hiring a lobbying consultant. And so that's a collaboration of Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara County, and Ventura County. I might have missed one in the middle there, but and we're all trying to make better passenger rail service in Central California. The Neighborhood Advisory Council met, and they had an update on our sewer system. Very exciting. Takako Wakita, a longtime member of the TOBA Japan Sister Cities Group, has retired from the Sister Cities board after about 40 years, and we had a luncheon for her. That was right before the holiday break. And the Women's Economic Ventures had a small business fair, and that was right before the holidays as well. So that's it for me. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you. I unfortunately was sick for most of the break that we had, but I was able to go to a neighborhood advisory meeting, and that was really nice to be able to wrap up the year and to hear their future plans. I also did a walk through the downtown west side with Sharon Byrne. She gave me a tour, so that was really nice of her to show me around. And I also got to go on a ride-along on New Year's Eve with the police department, and that was pretty adventurous. It was a lot going on that night, obviously, and I got to see what it's like to be a police officer and give up your holidays to make sure that the city is safe and things are good. So thank you.
All right. Councilmember Friedman.
This morning, Councilmember Dominguez and I attended the Sea Level Rise Subcommittee. We were transitioning from the vulnerability assessment into the adaptation planning and strategies, and so that's the next phase, and today we were focusing on bluff tops.
Okay, Councilmember Dominguez.
I attended the last planning meeting for the New Year's Eve day group in the Funk Zone that planned these family-friendly events around the Funk Zone. And it was great. They had everything from things planned at the Moxie for kids to youth singing competitions. And then they had a 9 o'clock p.m. ball drop on New York time in their artificial turf area. And then they had a champagne lounge above that. And so it was great because there was art, there was music, several businesses, art establishments in the Funk Zone were involved. And the idea was to create somewhere where families and individuals could go out on New Year's Eve day and be safe and do arts and recreation and have a good time. So it was fun to be part of that. And then I was actually there for part of the evening, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. So it's something that I hope they continue again next year.
Good. Sounds good. So we will move on to our next item, which is a closed session. We're having that. Madam Clerk, what is that? Do you want me to read it?
Item 15, conference with city attorney, existing litigation, as described in agenda item 15.
And we won't be reporting back probably, so we'll adjourn and the memory of the folks who lost their lives in the Montecito debris flow and the Thomas Fire. Thank you.